I shaved my babies. This is your girl, Lucas Queen, coming at you. I hope all is well with my loves today. Yes, I'm going hard in the paint one more again. I'm trying to get back in there like swim well. I've been slacking up. The girl ain't been doing her job. So it's time for me to get back on it, I say, loves. I can just get so frustrated sometimes, my babies. Because, I'm trying to give y'all this knowledge and seem like y'all don't want it. But like I say, I'm like the prophet Ezekiel. When he went out to preach to the dry bones, the Lord said, "Go on out and preach anyway." So now, I will make the statement: I have no rights to this content, as you all know. I have started running a series of lectures and spiritual studies by C.G. DAHLIN, because he is one of the great lecturers, or should I say, one of the great leading people in the field of spiritual studies. My first is Manly P. Hall, who he studied after. Also Alan Watts, Carl Jung. These are among my favorite mentors, I should say. They help. I was already on the path to enlightenment, because I know this enlightenment, this is a lifelong journey. And as I've always told y'all, religion and spirituality, they go hand in hand. Like I said, I was raised religious, but I'm spiritual, because we all are spiritual. We're born spiritual. Spiritual beings, spiritual souls, reincarnated here on this earth to have a human experience, to heal the world. You understand? To raise vibrations. I'm trying to put the knowledge in your head, my babies. I'm what they would consider a Gnostic. I believe in the insane Jesus, the cosmic consciousness. I believe in love. One is all is one. Love is the highest vibration, loves. Love is what will heal this planet. Not hate, love. We must love one another. There's no greater sacrifice than for a man to lay down his life for what? His brother or his sister. Now, this is I know most people have heard of the book of Enoch. I'm quite sure you have. If you haven't, something wrong. The book of Enoch, fallen angels, the Nephilim, space travel, the Deluge. Why it's not in the Bible? Why it is not in the Bible? I'm giving you the esoteric teachings, the esoteric knowledge, the inside, the inner knowing behind religion. It all goes hand in hand. I always say religion, the Bible is a love. They just didn't. They some people just couldn't handle. They cloaked it, symbolisms and allegories, and a lot of people actually, literally, the Bible just as it is. But you're a damn fool. Now, enough of my gabbing. My loves, I hope y'all in this spiritual study by C.G. DAHLIN, the book of Enoch, fallen angels, Nephilim, space travel, the Deluge, and why it's not in the Bible.
Do spiritual study session, I believe it's 6th time. We are focusing on the book of Enoch. We'll give you a very decent understanding of what this book is. This has been brought up a lot recently with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and of course with ancient astronaut theorists, those that study Sumerian. But instead of approaching it with a certain perspective, I'm going to attempt to give you a very unbiased and large stretching perspective on what this book says and what the contents are. So first, we have to bring up the Christian references. So I'm looking directly at the Bible, not the Book of Enoch, but the Bible. And we see references to it with Hebrews 11:5. By faith Enoch was translated, that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony, that he had pleased God. So the Bible says that Enoch transcended death. In Jude 1:14, it says, and Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints. This is a direct reference to the book of Enoch, by the way. Jude directly quotes the book of Enoch in the Bible. In Genesis 5:22, we see, and Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years, and begat sons and daughters. And then finally, the last quote from the Bible mentioning him, well, there's several more, but these are the ones I picked. Genesis 5:24, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Again, a reference to this gaining of immortality, but no explanation as to how in the Bible, which we'll be seeing plenty of. So the actual book of Enoch, in its fullest form, is found in Ethiopia. You also find it in fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls and among the Greeks. It, by many denominations of Christianity, is considered pseudepigraphica, which means it falsely claims authorship by a biblical author. They call this false. It also could be considered apocryphal, which means of doubtful authenticity. So in this way, it goes into a number of books, like the Gospel of Thomas, non-canonical. Many Christian denominations consider this to be a collection of writings gathered from multiple authors. And what they point to say that this book is not good is they quote the Bible. Luke 24:44. He said to them, this is Jesus talking, allegedly. This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that was written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms. So allegedly, Jesus is saying these are the things that you should pay attention to. And mind you, we're not going to entertain the idea that some changes could be made to the Bible, or a quote could be made to say what Jesus said, but isn't actually, but this is my own skepticism. So, like I mentioned before, though, regardless of if they want to do away with it in classic or in many different forms of Christianity, the book of Enoch is directly quoted. Enoch is a canon character in the Bible. And to start diving into more of what the book actually is, I have to say that what is considered the book of Enoch is actually referred to as First Enoch. There is a second Enoch and there is a third Enoch. So there are many different books here that we can talk about, but we're focusing on the first Enoch, the book of Enoch. So for some more context before I really start diving into it, Enoch is the great-grandfather of Noah. This book details the origins of demons as fallen angels, the origins of giants, which are the Nephilim, and explains why the Genesis flood was a moral necessity. There's a few books within the Book of Enoch. There's the Book of Watchers, there's the Book of Parables, and there's another book that is dedicated to astronomy. All these books are said to be written at different dates by some, where others would claim that this book was originally written by Enoch. So there's a lot of disagreements, but to the scholars and to the theologians, they think that this was generally written 300, 200 BC, some around 100 BC. So this is held as canon. The Book of Enoch is held as canon by Ethiopian Jews. They call it the Beta Israel. You have the Ethiopian Orthodox Church considers it canon. The Eritrean Orthodox, they call it Tawahedo Church, considers it canon. So there are offshoots that consider the Book of Enoch a part of their religious faith. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of disagreements here. Other Christian groups consider it non-canonical, but inspired. And then others consider it non-canonical and heretical and non-inspired. So there's this is a contention among Christianity in various ways. So as I mentioned somewhat in the beginning, there's also disagreements as to what the original source was. Some say the original source was Aramaic. Some say that it was Hebrew. However, if you say that it was actually written by Enoch, then it is an antediluvian language.
Wonder why they don't want them books in the Bible. Very interesting.
Which has been translated many times over and over again until it's reached Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic. So our most complete version, and the version that you can read, is coming from the Ethiopian manuscripts that have been preserved for who knows how long. So the translation is actually from Ethiopian, or Ge'ez as the language. It was originally translated into English.
And for all of y'all, Pan-Africans and Hebrew Israelites, and we all know that we were first. The black man was first. Everybody knows that because everyone else came from us. Now, see, this is why you should be listening to this. Because if you know your history, before they came up with this white, black, yellow, all that bullshit, we were all people of color, all dark-skinned races were called Ethiopians. And we are the true people of Israel.
By a guy named James Bruce in the late 18th century, or actually in the 19th century, technically. So let's start getting into what this book actually says. There's the kind of context. Now we can be aware of its information. Now, what about the content? So first I have to talk about what is referred to as the Watchers. So this is what gets the ancient astronaut theorists.
Now, have y'all ever, C.L. Franklin did a sermon on the Watchers. What think ye of the night?
Up right away, right? The Watchers, what does that mean? However, we don't have to just point to the Book of Enoch to see this verbiage. We also see it in the Book of Daniel. Daniel describes it in 4:13. It says, I saw the visions of my head as I lay in bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. Another one, Daniel 4:17, this sentence is by the decree of the angelic watchers. And then lastly, Daniel 4:23, and because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. So it's not...
And now, for all you extraterrestrial theorists who believe in UFO, well, I believe in it too, because I'm quite sure God didn't just make us. I'm quite certain that there are other life forms, maybe not in our galaxy, but we have many galaxies. Why you think they keep taking their ass out there in space? So basically, if you really listen to how Enoch, in the book of Enoch, how he described those angels, they look just like extraterrestrials.
Completely original to the book of Enoch to call them watchers. So we'll get into this more as we go along, but I'm going to have to set up a few things as we go. So a big part of this book is in reference to the fallen angels. Now, in the Canaanite talk, I talked a lot about how Christianity and Judaism appropriated the god El from Canaanite, El, which, if you notice, all the archangels share this ending with El.
That's right.
Raphael, Uriel, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to dissect there, but that's not what this class is about right now.
I can break it down too.
Here's a heretical claim from the book of Enoch. There is this angel, Gadriel, and he is said to be the one that tempted Eve. I want to say right now, there is no Satan, Lucifer, or devil in the book of Enoch. This is not the case, and we'll see why. So let's talk about these fallen angels and the watchers for a moment. So I'm going to be quoting the book of Enoch a lot here. So this is chapter 7. It happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days, that daughters were born to them, elegant and beautiful. And when the angels, the sons of heaven, beheld them, they became enamored of them, saying to each other, come, and let us select for ourselves wives from the progeny of men, and let us beget children.
That's right. And they had giants.
So 200 watchers, angels, came down to earth to mate with women. I'll continue. Then they took wives, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery, incantations, and the dividing of roots and trees. And the women...
Now, y'all hear that? They see those angels that had children with the women here, with humans, the angels that fell from heaven. You heard what they said? They taught them incantations, which is what? Stories. What we talked about yesterday, that you don't have to mix nothing up, no potion up to do a spell. Words, incantations, your words are spells. The incantations, repetitive things, those are spells. They taught them how to divide roots and herbs. Are y'all listening to me or what?
Conceiving brought forth giants. These are the Nephilim.
You ever wondered about Jack and the Beanstalk?
Are the crossbreeding between the watchers and human women. There's a lot to unpack here. So when there are very few references to the Nephilim in the Bible, and it brings this kind of question mark, much like the name Enoch does, here is all of our explanation. There are, by the way, I should say, there are traditions all over the world that have different legends on giants. The Greeks have plenty of legends on giants. The natives all have legends on giants that make them seem completely as if they were here, they were real. Okay? If you want to dive deep into theosophy as well.
And not only that, there's a passage in the Bible where Moses, remember, he couldn't go over because he sinned against God when he broke the tablets, when he threw the tablets into the bull. Remember the gold god. So he wasn't able to cross over. And he sent people over there to investigate the land. They said there were giants over there. Come on, people, use your brain.
There's a lot to say about giants in the ancient world, in the antediluvian world, which, by the way, if you don't know what that means, it means humanity and the earth before the great flood. So this is not rare. This is not unique to.
That's what the flood was all about. The flood was to wipe out all those crossbreed with the giants and with the women of earth. If y'all go back and y'all listen to the live I did the other night about Kabbalah, about the tree of life, see, you'll know all these things. See, the tree, it explains all of that. Like you say, that's Satan. That yeah, there's evil. Of course, there's evil, but it lives in people when they become infected by evil. It tells you about how you ascend different stages of enlightenment. Just like see it, like Reverend Franklin said. He said, yeah. He said he used to meet people here, God bless the dead. He said he used to meet people all the time, say there was no devil. But if you listen to what he said after that, he said, yeah, just sure as he lived, there is a devil because he see it in what? In the faces of people every day. People are devils when they're evil.
Christianity. So yeah, unpack that as much as you want. Look into that as much as you want. But what's important here is the Nephilim are the giants, and they are a crossbreed. So I will continue with the quotes. Whose stature was 300 cubits. These devoured all of which the labor of men produced, until it became impossible to feed them. When they turned against men,
as I say, that was one of the first stories that we were read in elementary school. Jack and the Beanstalk. Put the shit together. 1 + 1 is what? 2.
They began to devour them and began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat their flesh one after the other and to drink their blood. So humanity and the earth could not sustain the life of the Nephilim. And this is ultimately, and there's a lot more detail, but I'm giving you the spark notes, I'm giving you the summary here. This is the corruption of the earth and mankind. These angels coming down and mating with women. And not only that, but this. So, moreover, Azazel, which is one of these angels, taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, how to make bracelets, how to make ornaments, how to use paint, how to beautify the eyebrows, how to use stones and dyes. And, you have another angel who was teaching sorcery, the dividing of fruits, like I mentioned. You have another that's teaching the observation of stars, which we'll get back to that later. You have another that's teaching signs. You have another that's teaching astronomy. You have another that's teaching the motions of the moon. So with these angels coming down, whoever these angels are, right? Because this makes it seem like they have physical form, which brings up the question of the ancient astronaut theorists. So not only mating with them, but also the teaching, the revealing of these secrets is the corruption of mankind. So as it was, by the philosophy of the Book of Enoch, as it was, humanity was completely good. We were completely pure. We were doing exactly as we needed to do. And the fault came when these watchers came down and did this stuff. They shared the knowledge. They made it. So in response to this corruption, and this is what makes the Book of Enoch a lot like classic Christianity or a lot like the Old Testament. You'll hear what I'm saying. So in response to this corruption, this is the quote. Then explain to them the consummation which is about to take place. For all the earth shall perish. The waters of the deluge shall come over the whole earth, and all things which are in it shall be destroyed. Restore the earth with which the angels have corrupted, and announce life to it, that I may revive it. So a lot of this text is God damning these fallen angels. So lamentations, lamentations, lamentations. That is that same type of tone that we're used to. But here it is already. So with what the fallen angels have done, that is why the flood happened. That is as it's explained in the Book of Enoch. Another, as we'll go on, that on the earth they shall never obtain peace and remission of sin, for they shall not rejoice in their offspring. They shall behold the slaughter of their beloved, shall lament for the destruction of their sons, and shall perish forever, but shall not obtain mercy and peace. So this is a big, big no-no. All right. What's interesting here is that angels are capable of sin. And as a matter of fact, they are the ones introducing sin. Curious, huh? That's a different twist on the whole story. Again, as the angel that tempted Eve, and again, as the angels that came to earth.
I might be able to get through this live.
And now to the watchers.
So the storm out there, now my Wi-Fi want to start acting haywire.
Were in heaven. Say, in heaven have you been? Secret things, however, have not manifested to you, yet you have known a reprobated mystery. So this is basically saying that knowledge is a sickness, that revealing these things has corrupted mankind. Revealing these secrets has corrupted mankind. And to this you have related to women in the hardness of your hearts, and by that mystery have women and mankind multiplied evils upon the earth. So very different perspective that we got here. So let's focus a little bit more on the giants, okay? Ooh. So this is what God says on the giants. And mind you, this is all being recited to Enoch. Enoch is listening in on all this. He is the messenger of all this. That's why the book was written. Whenceforth that you have forsaken the lofty and holy heaven which endures forever, and lain with women, have defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, have taken to yourselves wives, have acted like the sons of the earth. You, being spiritual, holy, and possessing a life which is eternal, have polluted yourself with women. Interesting. Have begotten in carnal blood, in body, and have lusted in the blood of men, and have done as those who are flesh and blood do. Therefore, I have given men these wives, that they might cohabit with them, and their sons might be born of them, and that this might be transacted upon the earth. But you, from the beginning, were made spiritual, so of a different substance, possessing a life eternal, and not subject to death. Interesting. I have not made wives for you, because being you are dwelling in heaven. So spiritual entities need to mean that they are eternal, not need to multiply. Giants who have been born of spirit and flesh shall be called upon the earth spirits, and on the earth shall be their habitation. Evil spirits shall proceed from their flesh, because they were created from above, and from the holy watchers was their beginning and primary foundation. Evil spirits shall be they upon the earth. The spirits of the wicked shall be they called. Their habitation of the spirits of heaven shall be in heaven, but upon the earth shall be the habitation of terrestrial spirits. Basically, that they are wrong. They should not exist. They should be destroyed. The spirits of the giants shall be like clouds, which shall oppress, corrupt, fall, contend, and be a bruise upon the earth. Notice that God is damning the communion between gods and man. And this is interesting and unique, because in Greek, you have demigods. In many other pagan pantheons, you have demigods. All the time, you have these different myths of kind of hybrids. In Sumerian, you see this too. You could, Gilgamesh, the earliest book, right, was a demigod, was the communion between a god and a woman. Excuse me. So for the book of Enoch to be doing this is an interesting cultural move. It's something very different than the history that's being inherited from all other areas of the earth. So that should be noted. Another interesting thing about how this book goes on is that it doesn't say hell. What it says is Sheol. And this is more of a Jewish reference. So Sheol is not only a place for evil humans, but it's a place for these evil fallen angels, these evil watchers. And it's understood in Judaism and in the book of Enoch as a place of darkness, of which the dead go. Sheol can be kind of directly translated to Hades. The two are kind of analogous, so we're taking Greek inspiration here too.
Big
Sheol
Dog Philly,
is
what's going
a
on?
permanent place of the dead. Who have been damned there
What's
will
happening?
be there only until the last judgment. So there will come a day when everything.
Y'all better listen to this. Y'all better get some of this in y'all head.
Eschaton, which is a whole other subject, but
I'm trying to
it's
give
not
y'all
this
these
classic
gems.
hell, which is plainly eternal,
How's
because
it
there
going
would
today?
be a time where there would be a potential release, which is another subject to go into. Other things that are like Sheol would be Talmud and Gehenna, depending on what traditions we're talking to, but it's much more similar to other traditions, this concept of the underworld. We have a scholar argue that Sheol in these old times was considered an underworld deity, again, like Hades, and that this would be likened to other aspects of pantheons of the past. So Nergal of the Sumerians, Mot of the Canaanites. So there could be a missing translation here, that it's not necessarily a place, or that it is both a place and a deity, Sheol. So that's a bit to dig into, but just a curiosity that I wanted to talk about when it comes to the book of Enoch and how it differs from the classical Bible. Okay, so here, let's get into what is most curious to people, and rightly so, and that is the space travel that happens in the book of Enoch. So I'm giving you just a taste here. I'm not giving you the whole thing. There's a lot. But here, let's go for some quotes.
As I say, you never get tired of learning.
Behold, in the vision of the clouds, a mist invited me. Agitated stars and flashes of lightning impelled and pressed me forward, while winds in the visions assisted my flight, accelerating my progress. Okay. They elevated me aloft to heaven. I arrived at a wall built with stones of crystal. A vibrating flame surrounded it, which began to strike me with terror. So here's where the ancient astronaut theorists come in. What is this person with their understanding describing? Is walls of crystal a type of technological observation? Is vibrating flame like a conduit of energy that is being harnessed?
We are energy.
Anyway, into this vibrating flame I entered, and drew nigh to a spacious habitation built upon stones of crystal. Its walls, too, as well as pavement, were formed of crystal, and crystal likewise was the ground. And mind you, this is an old book, so just read this. Its roof had the appearance of agitated stars and flashes of lightning, and among them were cherubim of fire and stormy sky. Curious. A flame burned around its walls, and its portal blazed with fire. And when I entered into this dwelling, it was hot as fire and as cold as ice. No trace of delight or of life was there. Terror overwhelmed me. Ooh. And behold, there was another habitation more spacious than the former, every entrance to which was opened before me. Again, a vibrating flame, whatever that means. So greatly did it excel in all points, expansion, and in glory, and in magnificence, and in magnitude, that it was impossible for you to describe either the splendor or the extent of it. So this is boundary dissolving step. This is an insane experience. Maybe kind of DMT-ish. Its floor was on fire, and above were lightnings and agitated stars, while its roof was exhibiting a blazing flame. The appearance of which was like that of frost, while its circumference resembled the orb of a brilliant sun, and there was the voice of the cherubim. From underneath the mighty throne of rivers of flaming fire issued. To look upon it was impossible. So all of this, let me dissect this a little bit instead of continuing to quote. All of this is a very unspeakable, ineffable experience. This is the experience that Enoch is allegedly having as he's being pulled into the heavens. We want to take that literally, we want to take that figuratively. And this is where, at this point, where Enoch would meet God upon the throne. And mind you, God, much like in the Gnostic sense or in the Kabbalistic sense, is ineffable, unseeable. You can't look at him because of all of what's going on. This isn't necessarily Christian, because in Christianity and the canonical Bible, he's more anthropomorphized. He's more made human-ish.
Right.
Whereas here, he's just like what I was describing.
That's why they
where
took
it
it
is
out.
Completely unperceivable.
Anything
And I say this is more Kabbalistic
fit.
and more Gnostic because they made that
With their
point
agenda, they didn't
very,
put that in
very
there.
poignant in
Why
their
you think those
writings.
Dead Sea Scrolls?
Now, here's a curious part.
They
It's not
found
long,
buried
quote, but
with people
I saw
over
the
there.
treasures
They
of the
were buried
winds,
with
and I
them.
saw with them that he had adorned all
Thought they were trying to
creation
hide
and the
them. They didn't want them to be
foundations of the
destroyed.
earth. I saw the winds that rotate and drive through the orbits of the sun and the stars in their rooms.
Listen to that
I
now.
saw that the winds extend to the veil of heaven, and how they have a place between the heaven and the earth, and they are the columns of heaven. So let me dissect this for you. This winds could be a reference to magnetic fields, winds that rotate. Okay, in this way, people have pointed to this this as a potential reference to magnetic or auric fields that surround the Earth, and also references to solar flares that pass between the sun and the Earth, and that he would describe these things as winds. So by how we can interpret this, Enoch is experiencing an exterior perspective of the Earth, i.e. space travel. So earlier we can interpret that he was on a ship, and that's what was made all of crystal. And this is where ancient astronaut theorists jump in, right? And then here it's very plain and much more literal.
If you look over there in the Louvre Museum over there in France and all that, they have paintings from what 50, I mean early paintings. I don't remember exactly what century, but they old. Maybe 10th, 15th century. I mean, they real, and they have picture. And if you look in the background of the picture, they have UFOs in the background. If you had, but you have to be able to spot it because they have it in the background of the picture. I'm thinking I'll pull that up
for us to see that perhaps this is a speaking of an exterior perspective of the Earth, and that maybe, just maybe, modern astronauts were not the first ones to witness the exterior of the Earth. Okay. Now, to kind of bring this point forward, instead of space travel, we also see several allusions to Earth travel, like traveling around the Earth through the sky. They raised me up into a certain place where there was the appearance of burning flame, and when they pleased, they assumed the likeness of men. Okay, so the appearance of the burning flame in a place, so this could be a type of propeller, and saying that these watchers, these angels, can assume the likeness of men. Shape-shifting, maybe. They carried me to a lofty spot, to a mountain, to the top of which they revealed, or they reached toward heaven. So in the air, the heaven, or the mountain reaches the heavens. And I beheld the receptacles of light and of thunder at their extremities of the place. So he can see the tops of clouds, and he can see how lightning is forming in those clouds. There was a bow of fire and arrows in their quiver, a sword of fire and every species of lightning. Okay, interesting. They elevated me to a babbling stream and to the fire in the west. Now listen to this. To a fire in the west, which received all of the setting of the sun. I came to a river of fire, which flowed like water. So he's seeing lava, and emptied itself into the great sea westwards. And then he describes how this forms an island.
every time I
So he's
start
getting like a planet Earth viewing.
It's truth out here. My throat is start messing with
and
me.
this is the one that I find
I noticed that.
really curious. I saw every large river until I reached at the great darkness, and I went to where all the flesh migrates, and I beheld the mountains of gloom, which constitute the winter, the Arctic, and the place from which issues the water in every abyss, the ocean, the Mariana Trench. And I saw the mouths of all the rivers in the worlds and the mouths of the deep.
You can see it. Oh, I just see it too.
This goes on and on. This is just the part that I've selected out. Again, he
now look,
describes many modern phenomena that we now know.
Okay, this is a picture of the crucifixion. Can y'all see it? Y'all see that? Look right over. Wait, I've got to see how I got my finger here. Okay, see that? Look there. You see that in the background? But that, and I never seen this one. What it look like? It look like a UFO, don't it? Okay, let me go back this way. Hold on. Okay, see they got Jesus on. Now look right there. Hold on. I'm gonna try to build it so y'all can see it real good. Look at that. Look at see it. See that? Hold on. Uh-oh. See it? I gotta figure out how I can see it right there. Look. Oh man, I lost it. Go back. See, I'm not a professional at this shit. See this? What the? What that look like? You ain't crazy. I'm gonna find another
But in
page.
this ancient time, he should not have known of. So to change, and I will much later wrap this all up in a neater package, but I'm giving you the smorgasbord here, so hear me out. So now we're going to transition to talk about angels. So I'm not talking about the fallen ones. I'm talking about how the book of Enoch tells you who these angels are by name. Not only lists the name of all the fallen angels, but also lists the name of all the angels that are still in power. So in classic Christianity, we get like 2 or 3 names of angels: Gabriel, Raphael, and Michael, right? But here, and I'm going to list them quickly, not only who they are, but what they do. So these are the watchers of the present, okay? These are the ones that are the watchers now, not the fallen ones. Uriel, who is the angel who presides over clamor and terror. Raphael, who presides over the spirits of men. Ragiel, who inflicts punishment on the world and the luminaries for their evils. Michael, who presides over human virtue and commands the nations.
Yeah, this
No
one
wonder
here.
it's very important. Sarakiel, who presides over the spirits of children.
Let me show y'all this picture here. See here? Look at that. Y'all see it in the background back there? See it? See it right there? Let me blow it up some for y'all. Like here, hold on a minute. See it? Look at that. See it right there? See it right there in the background? Right there. Huh? Can't make this up.
That transgress, and Gabriel, who presides over paradise and over the cherubim. So this is interesting because this retcons the celestial hierarchy. If you want to get into that, I have a video on that. But it said in the celestial hierarchy, as it was formed from Christianity, Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, and from Thomas Aquinas, to say that the cherubim were one of the highest on the celestial hierarchy, and archangels were near the bottom on the celestial hierarchy. So here, the book of Enoch disagrees and says that the archangel.
I was close. That painting I just showed y'all right there, it's from the 15th century. Told her, and I guess that. Huh? Look, I got to study these here. They say they got hidden ones in the 16th chapel and stuff over there. I told you them Catholics, they know. Come on, they've been trying to hide that shit. That shit coming out. It's supposed to be. I see. Well, they got something here in the Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. I'm gonna have to check that one out. You know, if you ever watched the Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, I love stuff like that. Dan Brown, he did one called. I read the books before I saw the movies. Digital Underground. They all, you know, about sacred numbers, numerology, sacred numbers, symbolisms, and different things like the Da Vinci Code. See, I've always been into that kind of stuff. Always. That's why he be up there because he said I be watching crazy shit. I said no, I be watching something that's gonna put something in your brain. But I read the books because yeah, like I told you, I'm not perfect. I don't been to prison before twice. 10 years ago, I said the hell with that, and I've told people that before. I don't have nothing. Like I said, no one is perfect but the Father. I'm not gonna hide. I'm not gonna throw a rock and hide my hand. I think the first time I was on when Ahmaud Arbery, when the information man was doing the show about the Ahmaud Arbery case. That was the first time I met him, and I was on the panel, and I was talking to him, and I told him, I told everybody about how I had been in prison and stuff, and how things would go down here in Brunswick, Georgia. So that's not a secret. I don't hide nothing. Who can hide it for what? Because like I've said from the beginning, I am that I am. You take it or leave it. you know, I've made mistakes. Everybody have. I just got caught. Some people didn't. If I had used my intuition, I would have never gotten half the shit I got in. But see, I listen to my intuition now because it's stronger than ever. After I started walking in my purpose, standing my ground, and following the angels, my ancestors, my spirit guides, healing them childhood wounds, those abandonment issues and stuff. I spoke about all this before. I had demons. Everybody do. Had to let go of that ego. Everybody know I was adopted because I'm proud of it. I had to go through. I had to get over issues with my mother, my biological mother, the one that brought me into this world. I just feel like that. Because everything was already divinely orchestrated, already planned. Before I reincarnated back here, it was already written by the Most High. That's how I know I'm destined for greatness. I just had to learn those lessons that I didn't learn before. Then I had to find out it was time for me to get into my purpose. Yeah. Because I refuse to come back here and go through the same cycle again. I can only be me. I know who I am. I know my worth. And can't nobody tell me nothing different now. They can't treat me the way they used to treat me, though. And that's what they can't stand. They can't stand, baby. Because the manipulation don't work no more. I'm not a man hater because I know what a woman's supposed to be. Because let me tell you something, I am that type of woman. I'm not just saying it because it's me, but I mean, I know my heart. No one is perfect. Not none of these men are perfect. None of you men are perfect. Everybody have fallen short. They all lessons. As I always say, every lesson is a blessing. Lessons are we here to learn lessons. Everybody that comes into our life is for a reason because they were already in our life in a previous life. You don't run across people for no reason. There's no such thing as a coincidence. I say this 100 times. Everybody know I'm famous for saying that. There's no such thing as a coincidence. And I love true crimes. If for those who like true crime, what the police always say, they don't believe in coincidence. Nah, baby, You got to tap in. Actually, you never finish elevating. You know you're gonna always continue to ascend because that's what we do. We ascend and we transcend. So we energy. We want to transform. See what I'm saying? I've always been into the Marvel comics, science fiction, stuff like that. Transformers, my favorite movie. That's what the chairman of the board, chairman of the board up there, the one they had wanted to get Optimus killed because he could. They could the only one they could feed him was a Prime, Optimus Prime. But what did he say? We energy. You see, people don't pay attention to that shit. I've always been able to read between the lines. He said, what energy never dies, we only transform. Okay? These movies that they make, you think they just came up with that shit from out of nowhere? They just snatched them ideas out of the sky? No, I think not. Let me finish this session.
Have rulership over the cherubim. I didn't find any references to seraphim in this, so that's a whole nother topic. So, Enoch is shown a place where all the fallen angels will be damned for eternity, and then he is also shown places where the souls of the dead will be delighted for eternity. And then he is shown the sun. Okay, so listen to this.
Listen, man.
This is very important in my mind. This is a big difference in Christianity too. Where I beheld a fire blazing and running along without cessation, which intermitted in its course neither by day nor by night. So he's saying the sun goes on always. Ancient myths would say that the sun goes away and then it comes back, right? But he's saying it always goes, continues always the same as is quoted. And I inquired and said, what is this which never ceases? And then Raguel, one of the angels there, says, this blazing fire which thou beholdest running towards the west, sun, is that of all the luminaries of heaven. So, okay, the luminaries are stars. So in the book of Enoch, he's saying the sun is a star. And this, you might think, hey, Connor, why are you making such a big deal out of this? The church killed Giordano Bruno for saying that the sun was a star in like the 1600s. They claimed geocentrism for years and years and years. And this is the book of Enoch, right? And it's saying the sun is a star. All the stars out there are no different than our sun. We are one of many other things. And here in the book of Enoch, before Christianity, before all this time, is already knowing this idea. So that's humbling. So interestingly enough, too, here's another thing that I find fascinating. Enoch is brought to the tree of life, I think. So let's discern for ourselves. Here's the quote. The sweet odor shall enter into their bones, the odor of the tree. And this is interesting because in Islam, this is what happens to somebody who, when they're going to heaven, an angel comes and inserts an odor or what they call a perfume into you so that you can become a part of heaven. Okay, so this quote doesn't only have fascination for the book of Enoch, for Christianity, but also bleeds over into Islam as well. But let me continue. And they shall live long life on earth as they have where their forefathers have lived. Forefathers lived like 900 years. Neither in their days shall sorrow, distress, trouble, and punishment afflict them. So the tree of life gives them life. The odor of this tree gives them life. Interesting. And I bless the Lord of glory, the everlasting King, that he has prepared this tree for the saints, formed it, and declared that he would give it to them. So this tree of life is given to the righteous and the worthy. And allegedly, this is on the earth. Just a curiosity. But another one that seems a little bit more direct, a little bit more pertinent, is when he's brought to the tree of knowledge. So, they say, the tree of knowledge also was there, of which if anyone eats, he becomes endowed with great wisdom. Then holy Raphael, an angel who was with me, said, "This is the tree of knowledge of which thy ancient father and thy aged mother ate, who were before thee, and who, obtaining knowledge, their eyes being opened and knowing themselves to be naked, were expelled from the garden." So, this is different. Notice here, there is no blame placed on Adam and Eve. What it says is those who eat from the tree gain knowledge. Okay, that's it. So there's a difference. This is retconning Christianity. Okay? So, with this considered, we can now finally get to the question that starts to wrap all these things up. Why isn't the book of Enoch a part of the Bible? So in this book, Enoch is the Messiah.
What's up, Libby Lou?
Enoch is brought through space. Enoch is brought around the whole
Listen
earth.
to this. I'm trying to get y'all to
Through a
listen.
spaceship, through mystical means, who knows? And Enoch is not only speaking directly with God, he's speaking with all the angels. They are revealing all this knowledge to him. And in this way, you would almost assume that this is a sort of thing that Jesus would have gone through in those missing years between what we're told about his birth in the Bible and all of a sudden when he shows up when he's 28 or 33.
I hope you hit that like button. I hope you subscribe to your girl.
It's not to say that
had to go out there and
if
give
you
yourself
entertain the
you
book
don't
of
get
Enoch
an
that
orange
he is
see
the
what it's got
only
going
Messiah,
on.
this doesn't directly conflict with Jesus being Messiah. It's just to say that Enoch was real, like the real deal, the real deal. And later on in the book, he's so important because you're seeing how he's revealing, and again, he's the great grandfather of Noah. He reveals all this knowledge to Noah. That's how Noah knows what's going on, is that Enoch tells him everything from what he's been told.
Now, have you ever wondered why the Bible speaks of Enoch now? It's in the Bible. It talk about that. That's how everybody knows Enoch was his was Noah's great grandfather. And nobody ever wondered why they never put his book in the Bible. There's a bunch of books they didn't put in the Bible. How you doing, love? I hope you okay. All right, that's what I'm talking about. So what here to learn it? That's right. I'm here to give y'all that. I'm here to give y'all them gems. You're gonna have to go back and rewatch because I'm doing a series by this guy here, CG DAHLIN. Fantastic. I listen to a lot of Manly P Hall too, but CG he'd break it down a little lot more. Well, he can break Manly Hall break it down too, but he can really break it down more, jokingly and kind of get even a baby can understand it.
Another reason why maybe this isn't included in the Bible, Enoch's journey, all of this that I've mentioned, has a lot of similarities to the chapter of Ezekiel, which we went through in our other talk on
you have to rewind back
the celestial hierarchy.
Where I was showing
there
pictures.
are some differences here, though. For instance,
where I pulled up, these are pictures that are in the museums. These are famous pictures, paintings with UFOs in the background. I showed it on here a little while back. You can have to rewind it to see exactly what part it's in, but it's not too far back, maybe about 10 minutes or so.
The Ezekiel talk, and when you really want to dissect Ezekiel, you have to look into symbolism a lot more. It's much more of a very high symbolism
I keep telling y'all about
piece
symbolism.
of work. So there's a lot to dissect for those with very arcane knowledge, those with very esoteric knowledge. Whereas the Book of Enoch is much more literal. These travels that he's going through aren't drenched in symbolism. It's drenched in what you could interpret as more literalism, or it seems much more literal. So there are some differences, but that's another way that you could say, hey, shoo away Book of Enoch, because Ezekiel already did that. You've already got Ezekiel, right? Now, another
With the
big
dry
one
bones
as
in
to
the
why
valley.
it's not a part of it.
All that symbolism.
This book brings up the impurities of the angels. So it is mentioned that Lucifer in the Bible, which again is not mentioned in the Book of Enoch at all, but that Lucifer is a fallen angel, but it doesn't really discuss that much. Whereas the Book of Enoch extensively describes the sins of the angels and how they will suffer because of it. And this puts the fault on angelic beings. So in this way, you would be, that angels have free will would be an implication of this. This doesn't necessarily sit well with Christianity. Also, it's giving more context as to how angels are and how they behave and all their names. So this is putting more of a focus on them and what they do, which we're going to talk about more. Basically, what I mean by this is that the fault of evil on the earth is not put onto man. The fault of eating the fruit on the tree is not a fault. The temptation was made by the angel, the fallen angel. And in this way, all the horror and corruption that was formed before the flood was because of what the angels did, not by what man did.
What's up, Steve?
So this is why the Book of Enoch is much more Gnostic, because in Gnosticism, which is a very big eventual enemy to Christianity, humanity and mankind is not at fault for evil in the world. We are a victim for evil in the world. That doesn't mean that we are powerless. It just makes the priorities different. And a big thing of Christianity is that you need to feel guilty. It's your fault. Or it's everybody else's fault, and I know what's up, so I'm the good one, and everybody else is at fault. That's a big flavor of Christianity, whether you like it or not. So saying that the fault of evil is not man's fault is a big no-no. So that's a big thing that sends the Book of Enoch away from being canonized, okay? So this book is generally more likened to, as I kind of mentioned, Gnostic traditions and early Jewish traditions, even though, just like in Christianity, not all Jews
you've been going at it hard.
Consider the Book of Enoch canon. So this is somewhere in the middle between Jewish, Gnostic, and Christianity. It's this weird kind of gray area, okay? Now, another reason why the Book of Enoch is not part of the Bible is the giant astrological section. It's huge. And I'm just going to give you a taste of this, okay? I wrote down, okay. Then I saw another progress and regulation of which he affected onto the law of the moons, talking about Uriel. The progress of the moons and everything related to them, their stations, and I wrote down as he showed them to me. I wrote down their months as they occur, the appearance of their light, and until it's completed in 15 days. And in each of the 2 7 portions, it completes all of its light at rising and at setting. On stated months, it changes its settings, and on slated months, it makes its progress through each gate. In 2 gates of the moon sets with the sun. In those 2 gates, which are in the midst, in the 3rd and 4th gate. From the 3rd gate, it goes to the 4th from 7 days and makes its circuit. Okay, I know this doesn't sound very relatable, but not only the moon, but the sun and all the signs and the luminaries and the constellations are described in this way. And if I wasn't tasked with focusing on spiritualism and describing different religions, spiritualities in the ancient world and in the modern, I would spend a lot of time trying to dissect the knowledge that is given in the Book of Enoch of astrological things. If somebody spent the time to really dig into what Enoch is saying here, I think that there would be more knowledge described in this book than I think even modern astronomers are knowing of. It's truly extensive and very curious. Not only how elaborate it is, but how this book can be so elaborate on it. So I say this is a conflict with Christianity because Christianity has a very tenuous, faulty relationship with astrotheology. And again, I have a whole talk on that, astrology and Christianity, or astrology and religions. Many religions are based off of astrological worship, astrotheology.
Exactly.
This is why all the Roman gods are the names of the planets. There's a lot to dive into, but I won't. But it's just to say that Christianity tried to divorce itself from its associations with astrological religious-isms. However, a lot of what Christianity practices, most notably the birth of Christ, is tied to astrological events.
Exactly.
And the resurrection of Christ is tied to astrological events.
Exactly.
Okay. So, lastly, a big...
he did, and I did, he did a lecture on that because he does spiritual studies. I've actually not spoken, well, I've spoken to him, but we messaged back and forth, Instagram and Facebook. He's genius. I picked his brain. Yeah, he lives out in Washington, Seattle, Washington.
And why my last reason for why Enoch isn't in the Bible, or the Book of Enoch isn't in the Bible, well, two reasons really. This is a book. It is not a section. So you have the Book of Job, you have the book of you have all these different sections of the Bible, John, Luke, but these are really not that big in comparison to the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is a lot to read. That's why I'm such a mess going
that
through
book
all this.
Enoch go into real detail.
It's a big one, so it wouldn't be easily included in the regular form that the Bible took in the Old Testament or in the New Testament. So I think it's also a stylistic choice, that it wanted to focus itself on certain themes, and this would have been too big of a contribution. So even if all...
Oh yeah, as I was saying, I've listened to just about all of his lectures, but he's recently downloaded some more. He has a channel here on YouTube. The same name I put down is CG DAHLIN. He was complaining here a while back how everybody was complaining about the monetization and stuff, and he said they were on to him about why he won't monetize his channel. He said he don't care about all that mess, He just, for the people he feel like need to get this message, that's why he put the channel out here. So I'm trying to help push him on out there, because y'all missing some things if y'all don't listen to this man here. Him and Manly P. Hall, Carl Young, and Alan Watts. That's why he put the channel out here. So I'm trying to help push him on out there, because y'all missing some things if y'all don't listen to this man here. Him and Manly P. Hall, Carl Young, and Alan Watts.
The other things that I said before aren't true, because Christianity was great at editing and ripping things out of other texts, right? So why didn't they do that here? And again, I think a big reason is because this is a book. There's so much to it, and you can see, like in Jude, they could just quote it and pick it how what they wanted to take from it. And the truth is, they wanted to take very little from it because of the many things that I brought up. And lastly, there is, as I've sort of mentioned before, as a kind of summary of why it's not okay, this book puts a big emphasis on the heavens. It explains how everything works on the celestial and cosmic level, astrologically, mystically. It puts the emphasis on all of that. And on Enoch. Whereas Christianity is named Christianity, Christ's religion. The focus is on Christ.
Yep.
This book alone would make a religion of Enoch. So Enochi, which is, I know that's supposed to be a language, but anyway, this basically is to say that it puts the emphasis on the areas where Christianity doesn't want the emphasis, even though it's a part of the same story, and that Enoch would kind of take a lot of the attention away, maybe, from Christ and what Christ did.
Mm-hmm.
So my last section here, as a kind of summary of all this, is why do ancient astronaut theorists really gravitate towards this book? And I think that's kind of obvious, but I want to pick it apart a bit. So, for one, the Book of Enoch knows so much about astrology, astronomy, all of this.
Yep.
How the sun works, how the earth works, all of this. The visions of the earth, the visions of the stars, the visions over the earth.
That's right.
How?
Okay.
How?
Yep.
With this level of detail, how does the Book of Enoch know this? So you have to, from our modern perspective, there is a bit of a leap to say this is extraterrestrial. That is a way of explaining how. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's not true. Also, what's up with the Watchers? What's up with angels coming to the earth and mating with women? How? If angels are spiritual beings, they do not have a body, right? So in which case, maybe
how could
angels
they have
is
children
misinterpreted
with
here,
women
and this is
if
why
they were spirits?
astronaut theorists jump to it.
That's the same thing I say about
Because it's
Jesus.
to say that they have spaceships,
They believe in the Immaculate
crystal
Conception
and vibrating flames, right? Energy conduits, that they're watching. They're called watchers, right? That they're out there watching. You know, these are UFOs, right? UFOs aren't supposed to interact. They watch. So this really plays into the phenomena that's been experienced in ufology, which if you want to learn more about that, you can go to the talk on the New Age that I did. But with all the experiences of seeing extraterrestrials in the last century, apparently, and how that's played into the past, apparently, it's not a big leap to say that these angels, these watchers, would be interpreted as extraterrestrials. And where they get a lot of this digging into is that the Sumerians extensively talk about how the Anunnaki or the gods came down in their chariots and did mate with man. They ruled.
It's good to see you. I'm glad y'all here.
And created people like Gilgamesh, kings. And this is how kings started. Because of their royal bloodline, the bloodline of the angels or Anunnaki or the bloodline of the Watchers, as it had been passed through man, which made them holy, celestial, spiritual, whatever.
I'm trying to drop these gems on y'all.
With Enoch speaking of such ancient times, again, this is all happening antediluvian, before the flood. And this is where the Sumerian myths and all of this
outside, I let y'all see my gorgeous face.
So it's not, they all are kind of in the same camp here. This is deep, deep history. So it makes perfect sense that this conversation, what is brought up in the Book of Enoch, is tied to the Sumerians as well. and brings up these questions of extraterrestrial influence. If you want to look into this, this is
how your day been?
This is talked about a lot, not only on the internet. You can find plenty of research, but of course, the History Channel is completely blown up for like the last decade about ancient astronaut theorists.
I've done, I think about maybe 2 or 3 videos live already. Previous to this, I know I did a couple yesterday and the day before that. And this guy here is fantastic, and a really nice guy, down to earth too. And but I like I said, like Manly P. Hall, Carl Jung, Adam Watts, but he is one of my favorites because you can just hear it's like his sense of humor and everything when he's giving the lecture. And and what I like about him, he go and he'll bring the Bible verses. He'll quote the Bible verse, what book it's in, what verse and everything, and then he'll connect it up to the esoteric of it. See what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm chilling, baby. Oh yeah.
Speculations, and there's a lot to unpack there. I don't mean to discredit it, but the accounts of space travel, the accounts of astrology, the accounts of how the Earth functions, and how it's spoken about does bring up some interesting questions, and how you answer those questions is either very mystically, non-literally, or literally, and you bring up the fact that it's aliens. So, as another kind of summary,
I showed pictures a while ago.
When you're reading through the Bible, especially in the early part in Genesis, you see these references of the Nephilim. You see these references of
pictures from the 15th century that are over there in the museums. You can actually see it. Hold on, I'm just gonna pull it back up for you, but you have to rewind it and you'll see it. You will see the pit. You can see the UFOs in the background of the paintings. Let me see. You can actually see it. Hold on, I'm just gonna pull it back up for you, but you have to rewind it and you'll see it. You will see the pit. You can see the UFOs in the background of the paintings. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I'm gonna have to go to this other app here. That's what I hate about this phone, my babies. You can learn. I had to download a different app to open up certain files. That's crazy to me. And sometimes I don't want to open them up. That's what I hate about this phone, my baby. You can learn. I had to download a different app. No, that won't come out. Let me see if I'm gonna have to go here. Give me a minute, baby. I have it for you in a second. And remove this so I can see y'all comments. What happens since they want to confess there's aliens? When will they drop the missing parts of the Bible? He talking about those missing pieces of the Bible. He talking about it. You're gonna have to rewind and listen to it. But he talks about it. That's what he's talking about now, the book of Enoch.
You see these references of fallen angels. Where you're going to get your deep cut information on this topic is in the book of Enoch. This is where the information is. This is intentionally left out of the Bible. However, it is canon. I'm not saying the book of Enoch is canon. I'm saying the Nephilim, and I'm saying the fallen angels.
Let me tell you something. I said earlier about, let me tell you, look, they, from a child, I'm 46 years old. From a child, I've always been enamored with, science fiction and stuff like that, things like that. But just listen. There are many galaxies. Okay, we are only a part of one galaxy in a number of millions of galaxies. See what I'm saying? You got to believe. Listen, you cannot be stupid enough to think that God just created us and didn't create other forms of other beings. You know what I'm saying? Come on now. Yeah, I mean, I've always that's how you know That's how you know you really a chosen one because you from a child you already be knowing these things. That's why you're different. You didn't fit in with other people because you was too heavy for them. You was too deep. We was too deep for them. See. I was always been told I was an old soul. Look at this is a painting, the Madonna with Saint Giovanni, painted in the 15th century by Italian Renaissance artist D'Amico Gerlando. Now, okay, here, look here. See if you can see it. I'm gonna blow it real good. See that? Okay, that's the painting there. Now look in the background back there. What you see? Do you see it back there in the background? You see it, don't you? This is where I forget. I got to use this finger here. Look here. You see it right there? You see it? Okay. You see it? Okay, let me go another one. Let me show you another one now. And these are paintings that's over in the Louvre Museum in the 15th century. Come on now. You can't make it up. I'm gonna have to look at this one here again. I seen another one earlier that was a painting of the crucifixion. It was two UFOs in the background of that. Let's see if I can pull that one back up. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean the pyramids. What those things? They wasn't nothing but observatories. That's not it. Nah, not because I want to try to find it. I ain't gonna be able to find it. Here, let me finish talking. And I see can I find it while I'm.
This is a part of the Bible, so there are answers to be had here. Whether a lot of the denominations of
Christianity, but guess what though? What Dr. King said: no lie can live forever. That's look the damn. It's painted. It's painted over there in the They be thinking they be trying to rebuke that stuff over there in the Vatican. The Vatican, though, if you look at this man here tell you all that. I watch stuff like this. Let me tell you this. The Pope's staff. Why you see they got stars and all kind of different designs? Because they ain't nothing but pagan worshipers. We Christians ain't nothing but pagan worshipers. The sun, the S-O-N is S-U-N. I did a live the other night where he's talking about where he described it through the astrology, through the planets, the zodiac, the 12 disciples is the 12 zodiacs of the 12 zodiac signs. Capricorn, Aquarius, those are the 12. The 12 zodiacs are the 12 disciples, and the sun is S-U-N, the sun.
Christianity want to be rid of this book completely, This is a necessary part of Christianity's history. Mind you, too, even if people are trying to say that this wasn't written by Enoch, this was written before Christ. This was written before Christ's birth. So this book has a special interest in what would later form into Christianity. This was definitely an inspiration when it came to the books that were written of the Bible later on. So this is non-negotiable. This should not be ignored.
Okay, see here.
And there's a lot to dive in
That's the
here.
crucifixion.
And so I hope that this this general summary has given you a good idea of what to expect, what you can dive into, and also help dissolve some of those boundaries when it comes to what is classic Christianity,
what you see?
why
you
are
see
some
right
things canon and some things not, and also, you know, I guess I've also brought up some interesting questions.
There's another one right there in the background.
But all right, with that, I'm going to end this one.
Now, did y'all enjoy that? Yeah, they didn't want us to know. Y'all want to hear some more? Y'all what? Y'all want me to end it? I can pull up another lecture and let y'all listen to it if you want me to. Y'all just let me know. You know, I'm here for y'all. I'm trying to give y'all this knowledge. Yeah, y'all want to hear another lecture by him? I'm gonna plug up my laptop. Y'all let me know if y'all want to hear another one. I'll play another one. Let y'all listen to them. Yes, no, maybe. Y'all let me know now before I end it. Y'all want to hear another one? You do? Okay. Okay, hey, this my guy here. I'm trying to give y'all that knowledge, baby. That's what I'm trying to tell y'all. I was getting a little frustrated with it, but you know, the Lord said, no, don't give up. Don't give up. Okay, I got you, baby. Let me find you one. I got plenty of hours on here. I might as well use them. I'm paying for them. I might as well use them, ain't I? See, can I find a good one for y'all? Okay. Try to see which one. I did esoteric, goddess worship. What is ether, Norse mythology? I missed a bunch of them on here. Astrology. What y'all want to hear? Astrology and religion? I think that'd be a good one. Here, let me back it up. Astrology and religion.
Okay. Welcome to session 7. This is on astrology, very loosely. This is technically considered astrotheology, being that there is a strong belief that all the major religions of the world
I'm
gonna have to. Y'all
gonna have to. I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here listening, y'all.
The stars.
But I don't want y'all looking at
this is something that we can find
at no wall.
Across many cultures.
Put me a thing
this
up here
is.
So I can plug
I will
it up,
be elaborating on this today, but it's an important topic to me personally.
But I'm here with y'all.
This is something that I focused a lot on in my undergraduate years, specifically on the mixed relationship of astrology inside of Christianity, the whats and the whys and the wheres in scripture.
You know,
and historically speaking, astrology has been a topic of
that's why I'm trying to give y'all the
teenager.
I already know
necessarily
this shit.
in how it's been made
I'm trying to teach y'all, see.
But more,
you know, I had to put I'm a Capricorn. You know, I had to put my sign up there since we're talking about astrology
and how we can use it to understand where we come from ancestrally. regardless of what we think about astrology, it was of the utmost importance to our ancestors of practically, no, I will say every culture of the ancient world. The common impression of what astrology is essentially a pseudoscience, as it's been claimed under the general belief of science and scientism. However, it seems that the Reformation undertaken by Christianity, and then later the birth of rationalism and science from Christianity, would immediately give a bad rap to astrology. On the YouTube channel that I post all these talks to, there's a talk on the history of astrology that goes over this. This is something that I've discussed before, but today I want to specifically discuss more of, first, for one, how it underlies
I'm trying to put everything so I can
our history,
everything charged
and
up here.
Christianity and Judaism. And also, I hopefully want to have some time to discuss the philosophical implications of believing in astrology, and how this discussion has permeated the thought of human history in regards to free will and fatalism. So, with that introduction out of the way, we should begin to understand how the ancients looked at astrology by saying that they began religion by anthropomorphizing the seasons, illustrated by the constellations. So to look up in the sky and to realize that the stars hold relevance to the passing seasons. And accordingly, you give these constellations characteristics. You anthropomorphize them, whether they are represented by animal or by a type of archetypal figure. So the zodiac, or the zodiacos kyklos, as it was created or nurtured by the Greeks, was one of the first conceptual symbols of the ancient world, specifically the Western world. So to have the wheel and to have the sun in the middle was one of these first signs of very abstract thought. Now, before I go much further, we have to give credit to the fact that if you can imagine, all of us as a human society are put at ground zero. You know, we're back to hunter-gatherer times, a very minimal civilization. And we all come together in some way, the ancient past comes together in some way to be able to categorize and divide and name and understand the moving wheel of the stars in the sky. This is not just a great navigational feat, but the very effort shows a fervent dedication to understanding the stars, a fundamental fascination with what the stars are, what they do. So we can start by understanding this by looking at Aquarius. Now, many people think Aquarius is a water sign, but it's actually an air sign, but we're not going to get into these technicalities. But Aquarius is referred to as the water bearer, and this is the time of the year where the spring rains begin, or they did begin, based off the people who was naming these names. The Greeks gave this name. So the water bearer is the time of the year where the rain comes. In ancient Egypt, we have Horus, which is the big deal of ancient Egypt. Everything that Horus does, mind you, Horus is a sun god. Everything that he does in this lore, in this mythology, is a metaphor for the sun's movements. If you read through these old myths, you're seeing a personification of what the sun does in the sky. there is no difference between the God and the sun. What is happening in space is the God. Thus why the planets are named after Greek gods. So in Egyptian, it was always about Horus versus Set, or sunrise versus sunset, and light versus dark. This theme is completely intertwined in our history. I mean, all of our stories are intertwined in this duality, and our concepts and abstractions and mentalities are based off of this polarity, this dualism between light and dark, or sunrise and sunset. Now, here's where it has to get a little controversial, because Horus was born on December 25th, was born of a virgin with a star in the east, adorned by 3 gods, was a teacher at 12, baptized and made ministry at 30, and had 12 disciples, God's anointed sons, and was referred to as the Lamb of God. And after being betrayed by Typhon, Horus was crucified and resurrected after 3 days. This is by no means the beginning or end of how many similarities there are between Christianity and the myths of Egyptians. Similarly, and I've mentioned this in the Mithras talk, Mithras, Krishna, Dionysus, and Attis of Greece all have these same conditions of birth and resurrection of varying degrees. So this is the astrotheological understanding of this. The star in the east is Sirius. On December 25th, Sirius aligns with the belt of Orion. So they line up. And these 3 stars of the belt of Orion are known as the 3 kings, or the 3 wise men, whatever the verbiage is as it changes throughout time. Now, this is why the 3 kings follow the star in the east in order to find the sun. So when I say sun, this is an intentional pun. It is S-O-N and S-U-N, the same. Sun, sun. This is the birth of the sun. So to understand this, I'll go into it later, actually. I'll give some more context. But I want to take this time right now to talk about the star Sirius in particular. Now, the Yoruba believed that their gods, or they, originated from a planet near Sirius. The Egyptians centered their religion and the building of their certain parts of their pyramids around Sirius. The Babylonians, the Sumerians, much in the same way. The Native American tribe, the Cheyenne, have a story about a woman who married the morning star and gave birth to a star hero. The Blackfoot have many myths surrounding the morning star. It's an integral part of their mythos. In Chaldea, this star was known as the dog star, or the star that leads. In China, it was referred to as the heavenly wolf. So there's this strange thing in throughout ancient cultures of referring to Sirius by the name of a dog or a wolf. In Akkadian, it's the dog of the sun. The Siri, I think, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, but another African tribe, or actually a Southwest American indigenous tribe, refers to Sirius as the dog that follows mountain sheep. And the Cherokee referred to it as the path of the souls. So in certain ancient beliefs and or New Age beliefs, we have this concept that Sirius is a sort of gateway of the souls, that is where our alleged souls originate from, and that we come from there originally and are corporealized here on Earth. An extra note is the tribe of Nebraska, the Skeety, call it the Wolf Star, and the Alaskan Inuit call it the Moon Dog. So, where do I want to go with this next? This is not just important for the natives. It's not just important for the ancient Western world. It's important for the Eastern cultures and the Polynesians in different ways. So Sirius will be found in some capacity no matter where you are in the ancient world. You will always find different stories of Sirius, whether we're going to take this as literally as these kind of ancient astronomers do, where they believe that Sirius is the home of extraterrestrials that intervened with the human race, or whether Sirius is simply a star that is anthropomorphized or talked about in ancient stories. It is always a point of importance. So to get back on track and to start talking about where I was at before, you know, the three kings following the sun, the birth of the sun. The Virgin Mary is a representation of Virgo, which means virgin. The astrological symbol for Virgo is a kind of stylized M, which would result in Virgin Mary, or Buddha's mother being the Virgin Maya, or Attis's of Greece's mother, Myra. Virgo is often depicted as a virgin holding a basket of bread. And if we look at the Hebrew translation of the name Bethlehem, this translates to the house of bread. So where Jesus is allegedly born is in the house of bread in Bethlehem. It's not necessarily a place, it's more of a constellation. The winter solstice is the birth of the sun that has been previously viewed to be dying. So on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the sun, if we're watching it, is appearing static. It's not moving. So prior to this, the sun keeps moving down and the days keep getting shorter and shorter. But on these 3 days, the sun is understood as dead because the sun appears to not move. And only after the 3 days, on the 25th, the sun moves 1 degree up, which is viewed as the birth, because now days will start to return longer than the nights. So this is the astrotheological understanding of why so many ancient cultures have this depiction of dying, the sun dying, or Mithra or whoever dies and then is resurrected after 3 days, because of the dates of December 22nd through the 25th. So something that I mentioned in the Mithra talk as well is that the sun died on the cross. They say the sun died on the cross, but the cross is an appropriated symbol of the astronomical symbol for the sun. It is a circle with a cross on the inside. And oftentimes when you see crosses in Christianity, you see that it's a circle is involved with the cross. And so this is saying that the sun died on the cross is a kind of reference to its own thing. The sun died in the sun. Now, they would celebrate this date in the ancient past, mostly in the West. We originate this date from, we don't know exactly where, but we do see the same holiday, the same holy day, practiced by the Sumerians and the Babylonians long before any Abrahamic religion comes about. So they wouldn't have celebrated fully at this point because they still had to rough out the rest of the winter, but this was their showing of promise. They wouldn't celebrate until Easter, which was the spring equinox, which is where the light officially overcomes the dark. So where days are longer than nights. Now, another trope that we need to dissect here in order to, one, understand the Bible better, and two, understand the ancient past better, is that the use of the number 12 is inexplicably, or it's just completely intertwined with the constellations. There's 12 constellations. There are 12 disciples. The sun travels with the disciples. Again, as mentioned, the cross was originally a symbol for the sun. We have 12 tribes of Israel. Jesus was in a temple at 12. We have 12 kings of Israel. We have 12 prophets. We have 12 princes of Israel. We have 12 great patriarchs. We have 12 judges of Israel. And we have 12 brothers of Joseph. In Revelations 22:2, the tree of life, which bears 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. This is a direct reference to astrology. 12 different fruits, one of these fruits every month. Different archetype ascribed to a different month. Jesus is referred to as the Son of God, pun intended, the light of the world, pun intended. They see the sun coming in the clouds, Mark 13:26. Then Jesus came forth wearing a crown of thorns. The crown, this is John 19:5, by the way, the crown is sun rays. You see this in depictions of gods before Jesus and after Jesus. Especially Mithra is a good one to look at, where you see the rays going out, the crown of thorns going out. Excuse me one moment. In order to understand a lot of the ancient past too, we need to speak about the precession of equinoxes. And this is an astronomical and mathematical understanding that the ancient world had all around. So we can give all this credit to modern astronomy and so forth, but really the ancients had a very sophisticated understanding of how the cosmos or the greater solar system worked. So when we see an age represented in the Bible or in the past, an age equals 2,150 years. The great year, as it was called, the great year, was 25,772 years long. This is how long it takes for us, at our vantage point on Earth, to move through all the constellations and through all the ages to return to the spot where we were at before. So the age of Taurus is about 4,300 or 4,300 BC to 2,150 BC. This is the age of Taurus. In the cult of Mithras, Mithras is shown killing the bull, or the god of time, or basically doing the depictions that we see in contemporary bullfights. In order to move humanity from the age of Taurus into the age of the ram. Gosh, I mean, this stuff is rich, folks. From 2,150 to the year 1 AD, this was the age of the ram, or Aries. Again, this is the precession of the equinoxes. So each of these time slots in human history is categorized by the archetype ascribed to that constellation. So what humanity is going through on a collective consciousness level is affected or viewed, has been historically viewed to be affected by what age we're in. So the age of Pisces is from year 1 until 2150 AD. So a lot of people, you might have heard several times over, and this really came out in the 70s, that we have entered the age of Aquarius, or many people said that 2012 was the official cusp into the age of Aquarius. However, this isn't true. We are much closer to the age of Aquarius than we are to the age of the Ram. We are definitely in the latter part of the age of Pisces, but we're not quite in full form age of Aquarius yet. So I want to get into that later. I hope I remember to do so. It's really easy to get lost in this talk because honestly, there's way too much of this, and there's no way I could cover this in an hour. This is just to kind of give the platter. So Moses comes down with his commandments, right? And he sees people worshiping a bull, and he reacts with anger. I can't remember how it says. He either tells them to kill each other or to kill themselves, because he represents the changing of the new age into the age of the Ram, and they're still worshiping, or are symbolized to be worshiping, the bull or Taurus. As I mentioned, Mithras kills the bull, so here's another tradition talking about this ancient understanding of the transition of the age. So with this association with the age of Pisces in Jesus marking this new age, we can understand why there are all these bumper stickers that have the name of Jesus inside of a fish, or why, and I've mentioned this before too, why the Pope wears a fish hat. A quote from the Bible, we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. They were all fed on 2 fish, a reference to Pisces representing 2 fish. I'm not going to get into this as much, but it's something I mentioned at the beginning. We have many contradictory quotes from the Bible about astrology. My quickest way to sum this up is why we find all this scripture that makes astrology into the work of heathens. I believe the simplest way to put this is because they wanted to distance themselves from the worshiping of the specific planets. They wanted to make it about one, right? The highest up. And so since astrology at this point in history was tied to the worshiping of the gods, which were the planets, embodying them, making sacrifices to them, performing rituals with their names. This is why astrology was kind of demonized by the church, yet it is also inexplicably tied to astrology and owes its scripture to astrology, but it's hidden underneath the surface. It's more of an esoteric understanding and not an exoteric understanding. So I'll give you an example of how it goes good in the Bible. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, so on and so forth. A time for war, a time for peace, time to love, time to be silent. All of this is a very interesting reference to astrology because that's what it was about. As it started, it was all about omens. An early Sumerian king, Gidea of Lagash, had a dream of consulting with the gods about what was the right time to build a temple. This goes all the way into the past where they have to reference the stars as to when are good times to do things. So the Egyptians, or anybody else for that matter, would want to know if the Nile was going to flood so that they could harvest their crops ahead of time so that they wouldn't starve. This is something that I could get into much more, but we're going to move through. Genesis 1:14 through 15. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the light, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the sky and give light on the earth. And so it was so. Astrologically speaking, certain signs are cardinal signs, which show the beginning of a season. Certain signs are fixed signs, which means that they are the middle of the seasons. And certain signs are mutable signs, which make them the ending of seasons. In the Bible, Jesus was asked where the next Passover will be. And in Luke 22:10, he says, behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall be a man to meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entereth. So, Jesus is saying, in the next age will be Aquarius, a man who bears a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house. House is another term for constellation. Again, we need an esoteric, we need a level of understanding to see what's really going on here. We can't just read it at the surface and think that it's just overly abstract. So astrology was a foundational knowledge to the Norse, the Druids, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Zoroastrians, the Mithraisms, or the Mithraics, the Mayans, the
See, that's why I tell you, y'all need to get your birth charts and stuff and learn that you got 12 houses and everything. Every house has a meaning to it. Every aspect of your life, it all goes hand in hand, baby.
Texts, the Native Americans, and in more subtle ways, it's involved in all Abrahamic religions, Hinduism, Taoism, and
I'll be right back. I got to go fix me something to eat so I can take my medicine.
Buddhism. For instance, in Hinduism, Ganesh, it's the one that most people recognize because it's the elephant god. He represents the spirit of Jupiter, and this is translated as the Lord of Hosts. The Lord of Hosts is one of the favorite titles of Jehovah in the Old Testament. The Lord of Hosts being a direct reference, when you hear it, to Jupiter being the big boy, or Zeus, or, the greatest of all the gods, the planets. In the modern day, and we'll back this up a bit, but in the modern day, Einstein, Isaac Newton, Carl Jung, all heavily studied astrology. It was only recently that they could come out and talk about it because it was hedonistic. It was forbidden to look into astrology. Even Jung was very tiptoey about mentioning his study of astrology, but we can see it in his understanding of different psychological personality traits, most notably sensation, intuition, feeling, and thinking are translated to earth, air, water, fire. Fire is intuition, water is sensation, feeling is air. Maybe I'm mixing these things up a bit. I haven't studied Jung enough here. But astrology of the past did eventually get roped into what is called paganism or polytheism. However, astrology has always been in its main form. So although it got caught up in what we call gods or myth, it was highly successful in acts of clairvoyance and prophecy, which philosophically we're going to have to spend some time on. It is not an art that is hidden. Anybody who wants to learn about astrology, this is around. The only times, this is just me saying that it's not an occult thing. This isn't a hidden science. This is something that was a tremendous part of human history. The only time that it has been negative or been made to be secret was under the Inquisition, which is specifically tied to Christianity, and science follows suit, but science won't go about killing them, killing people for looking into it. This is not an art which deems anybody with what some might call psychic gifts. This is something of a system. If this, then that. The earliest forms of astrology resemble the farmer's almanac, resemble ephemeris. This is how people know when to plant and when not to plant and what to plant. This is something that is still used and made every year. The almanac comes out every year, yet people think astrology is woo-woo.
Y'all still here? Y'all going?
It's,
Y'all ain't making no
it's
noise.
about what's going on all around us. So, in Islamic sciences and Arabic understanding, this was always a part of their culture. It was the decree of the stars. In Sanskrit, in India, they refer to it in translation as the science of light. The Chinese would study it and would refer to it as the yin yang way, how things move back and forth, light and dark. There are all sorts of ways that you can make this subject much deeper than I'm going. And what I mean by that is that some researchers of astrotheology believe that certain religions are ascribed to certain planets. So I'm forgetting the name right now, but he was a 33-degree Mason. Manly Hall,
yep.
And he believed that Judaism was tied to Saturn, that Islam was tied to Venus, and that Christianity was tied to Mars. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. So people spin this all sorts of ways. However, as a historical understanding, what is the fact is that Jupiter is Zeus, Venus is Aphrodite, Ares is the god of war, Mars. This is simply the translation between the Greek names and the Roman names for the planets. So if you can imagine, it wasn't about Mount Olympus, really. It was that they could see the spherical bodies in the skies. They realized that these spherical bodies have an effect on the world, whether that is simply that when they're at a certain place, that means that you should plant these crops so that things go better, or to the level of, we are this way and my personality is this way because of these planets. It only turned into what we call horoscopic or deconic or personality-based astrology when it came time for the Greeks. The Greeks made astrology much more intricate and nuanced than their ancestors did. The Greek word for cosmos means world, but by the name world, it meant everything encapsulated by the eye. There's actually a place in Athens, it's a suburb of Athens called Neos Cosmos. That means new world. It's literally named the New World, just as a side note here. The root of the word cosmetic, cosmetology, cosmetics, is translated as beautiful order, or the beautiful world, or the beauty of the world. So that's how you can tie cosmetics to the cosmos. The cause of presence, let me back this up. There's many beliefs in ancient society, especially by the Vedas in India, that the cause of present events lie in the future. Or in other words, reality is a backwards causation.
Mm-hmm.
It is not about what happened before makes what will happen in the future. It's what will happen in the future makes what happens to it. So, like I said, there's many ways that this reaches mind-bending proportions. The Hebrews in the Old Testament made it a very firm rule that you must perform the rituals on certain days, perform rituals of holidays on those holidays, and to not do so would be to invite wrath or bad luck. And many other cultures took those days very, very, very seriously. They were sacred days, sacred, holy days. And we've really lost that root as a society as to why the holidays are holidays, why those specific days are those holidays. And the answers lie in astrology, ancient astronomy, ancient reverence of the order or the beauty of the cosmos. So, as I mentioned before, the First Nations of North America, they believed that the cosmos was a moving structure, enacted rituals designed to harmonize with this greater field of existence. So it was as if you could disobey the great function of things, and that would be to your misfortune. And much like in shamanism, which they still practiced, their ultimate goal was to honor how the stars were moving, so they would observe them. And as a last note before I go
Libby, y'all still
completely
here?
AWOL in my own discussions here, the Aboriginals and the Polynesians, before modern civilization reached them, they would use the stars and understood the stars as a means of navigation, from getting one island to another, to be able to travel in the night. Still to this day, and I know a guy personally, still to this day, you must have somebody on a freighter or on a ship that understands celestial navigation, that understands how to follow the stars in order to get to where you need to get, because in the off chance that their electrical or GPS systems go down, their last hope of not being utterly and completely lost is that one guy that most of the time gets just is paid to just sit there would be their only hope. So there is a root to all of these different disciplines of astrology. The natives of America had their own astrology. this was based off of animals, and this is very similar to what we see in Aztec had their own astrology, or the Mayans had their own astrology, which, if you remember, 2012 was all about this great year. You know, apparently their big clocks ended at this point, and that's why everybody's freaking out about 2012. Right. And that's again why they believe that it was moving to the age of Aries, or the age of Aquarius, which they thought the Mayans were calculating. So here in the Americas, they had their own. The Druids had their own, but theirs was unique because it was based off of trees and not off of animals. Chinese, they have their own, except it's based off of years. And they include different elements, metal and wood, as opposed to the classic elements of paganism: earth, water, air, and fire. And throughout the ancient world, the astrology that we know today, Virgo, Scorpio, Sagittarius, so forth, this is all inherited from the Western tradition, which has bounced around a few different ways. The big story there is that it's a mix between what came from Mesopotamia or Sumeria, moved to Egypt in a separate order, made its own, and then moved to Europe, and eventually coalesced in the Greeks. And then when Alexandria became a thing, all these different astrologies mixed together, and that's what we inherit as the Western tradition, horoscopic zodiac. So what I want to say with this is that it's everywhere, and there must be a reason why it's everywhere. So where the natives came from, however long ago, when they crossed the land bridge of Siberia to Alaska, or however they got there, there's some other ideas. They obviously brought this with them. So the tradition of astrology must predate all civilization as we know it by our contemporary historic understanding. There are depictions in caves in France and so forth of reverence to the stars that date like 25,000 years ago. This is something that you're going to find in every religion in some form. Now, it makes perfect sense that as early humans, again, imagine that we know nothing. We have no culture. We have no even necessarily a language, or even any of the things that we understand as it today. A car, what's that? A bookshelf, what's that? What's a book? All these things just complete no. We don't have any knowledge that the world is apparently circular. We don't have any knowledge of anything such as this. Okay, completely open slate. Now, at night, you look up and you see all of this, all these lights, these speckled lights. So what is this? Like, this is the original holiness. This is the original sacredness. This is the original fascination of pulling man's consciousness towards reverence.
All right, I'm back, family.
That there are tremendous things happening beyond. What is it? What could it be? Even the concept of us being on a planet is a little heavy-handed to talk about this early human psychology. So, and what's up with the sun? What is that thing? Why does it go away and then come back? And so logically, the moon and these planets, which they started to notice were different than the stars, and all of these things would be characters to them. They're things that reoccurringly interact with their human experience. So they can't talk with them, but they can observe them, or eventually maybe they can talk with them via oracles and so forth. But the myth, all the myth and all of the ideas and all of the names come later. But the first understanding was tracking, omens, a mathematical pursuit. There's arguments that can be made that astrology was the impetus for mathematics, was the impetus for science, was the motivation for everything that eventually bloomed, agriculture.
Yep.
If you study as an astrologer does, then you realize that certain points of human history seem to align with certain astrological alignments. So, for instance, when Saturn conjuncts with Jupiter, that is a tremendous time of change in the history of.
They actually say that all this is going on now with them overturning that Roe v. Wade, the abortion thing. All of that was lined up with this conjunction that we having.
Okay, something changes a lot. I'm not going to remember exactly what happens, but I think things like the Renaissance or revolutions, when Pluto reaches to a certain point in its 300s.
Even Hillary Clinton said that they waited years to do this because they go by the stars and stuff. Every president that has ever been elected have their own psychic, their own reader. They get tarot readings and everything. Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan, his wife, she did not let him do nothing without consulting with his spiritualist.
In your orbit, it always results in revolution, social unrest, and so forth. The last time that Pluto was at this specific point was the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and so forth. All of the revolutions that went through and essentially attempted to wipe out monarchy in the ancient world. This is now, actually, it's not here yet, but it's very soon returning. So if you feel like there's a worldly kind of social unrest, an astrologer would just be like, yeah, dude, I mean, this is a part of the clock. This is as it goes on. So, okay, as a further basis too, the understanding is that you as a person are the way that you are because of the first breath that you took when you came into this world. That first breath that you took is understood to be the codifying of that moment of history. You are that moment. The personality of what that moment felt like. Maybe it was a happy moment for some. Maybe it had all these elements. Maybe there was some interesting philosophical discussions going on. Maybe there was a world event that happened that day. What that day felt like, and specifically that microscopic, that minute moment of time where you took that breath is your essence, is your consciousness. Wow, the consciousness of that time is you, and your personality is according to that. So that's why we study where all the stars were, in order to get a gauge of who you were, the moment of.
I didn't see it. Oh, okay. Now that's why the natal chart come in. That's why the natal chart come into effect, your birth chart. That's what he's been talking about now. Because see, I listen to these, but it'd be so long since I listen to them. And then sometimes you're not always sitting in place. So you're gonna miss something. That's why it's always good to listen to it again. I listen to them 100 times because you're gonna always catch something that you missed the last time.
Birth and where you were the moment of your birth. So in this way, philosophically and historically, and if we're talking about the woo-woo end of astrology here, we're not talking about the practical side of astrology here. That means that you are a moment in time being dragged through other moments in time. You are the representation of one movement experiencing itself throughout other movements, which is a lot to deal with, I know. Now, the other thing I want to touch on, too, is this big discussion in the ancient world, which has taken on many forms in philosophical traditions, in religious traditions, being the debate between free will and fatalism. So fatalism is the divine plan, that everything is set. It's fate, hard-nosed fate, no changing it. Okay, that's one side. Then free will, where you are unaffected. There is nothing affecting you.
Libby, you know you're a star seed, don't you? Cause see, you kind of like me, a conspiracy theorist. I'm not quite maybe as deep as some, but there's a lot of things that I believe that most people don't believe. Cause I did a live the other night on star seeds. Go back and look it up and watch it. I gave all the descriptions of the star seed. You know, certain characteristics that could identify what planet, what solar system you're from, or what galaxy you're from, what star seed type you are. You need to go back and watch it.
You are utterly free to do everything that you could ever do, which I find very silly, because in which case, if you can do anything that you want to do, then why don't you just leap off this planet, be able to breathe air in space, become the king of the world? Well, actually, you know, just fly around. You don't need a plane, because you can do anything you want to. You have free will. But to say the opposite, that everything is concretely, utterly decided, this has been more of the philosophy of the collective past. However, like I said, this is a great debate. Now, historically, now we're talking the history of thought here. Free will is very much a newer concept. And what I mean by that is free will was very much introduced by Christianity in a lot of ways, and was really pushed by science, much like the demonizing of astrology. So those two go coincide with each other, go hand in hand. And Christianity ascribes free will in the sense that you can be a good boy and go upstairs, or you can choose to be a bad boy and go downstairs. Classic Santa Claus cult, a choice. There aren't certain souls that are born certain ways, you know. If we believe in reincarnation, then that would be to say that some people have been around so many times that they are inherently good because they've learned the many lessons of being evil. And if we understood it in this way too, people who are evil are just simply young, not old souls, but young souls who are experimenting with the limitations and the sensations and phenomena of corporeal existence. However, Christianity introduces this, which also introduces an amount of fear and guilt, which would become characteristic of our era all the way into the modern day. Whole nother topic. And science would blow the lid off that. We live in an anarchic, heartless world, which is ran by mechanistic mathematical algorithms that gravitation is this force, and the spinning of the astral bodies is a blind force. There's nothing divine about it. And in which case we are introduced with existentialism, nihilism, and trying to find meaning in the absence of any fate or any leading towards higher purpose or greater functioning happening in the universe. Now, this is a tremendous debate. This is something that we have struggled with in the same way as we struggle with the fear of our own mortality and our finite nature. The Greeks had an understanding that the stars compel, but they do not force. So it is suggestive, and it has a tendency. So the act of fate is kind of this middle ground here, where it's going a certain way, but you have the freedom to kind of form your own tributaries, or you have the freedom to go against that. But in other traditions, to go against fate is a tremendous mistake. For instance, in Hinduism and inherited by Buddhism, we have the concept of dharma, which is more or less your life purpose, your way in life, which we'll talk about this when we get to Taoism, which I've been waiting a long time to do. To negate the dharma, to refuse your way of life, to refuse what you were born into, is to invite a great havoc unto the world, to punish not only yourself, but everybody around you. If you've ever watched the series Lost, it's an old ABC show, you know, it's the Dharma Initiative. Every time they leave, when they attempt to leave the island, they are going against their dharma, and people die and things go wrong, so they always have to return and deal with their fate. This is, Lost is a great allegory of the way that the Sanskrit, Hindu, Buddhists understood dharma. So again, we have some cultures here, and still to this day, to break your dharma is a huge taboo. There is one culture that errs on this side, that you must go with your dharma, you must go with the fate. You have the natives, again, as I mentioned before, who believe in any shamanistic, you know, whether we're talking of the true shamans of Siberia, or we're talking about the shamans who operate in Africa, or we're talking about the shamans who do their ayahuasca ceremonies down in Peru and so forth, or we're talking about the shamans sprinkled all throughout the different tribes and cultures. Their belief is always to go with the fate, to embrace the way, to embrace what the stars have to compel you. So this is why it's been a very contentious topic in the past, because the implications of this discussion have everything to do with why we approach life. The stars introduce an existential, divine, and reverential aspect to our lives. We, in the scientific understanding, they make us exponentially small. We are a scrap of dust. And in the other way, to kind of flip that script, the stars can be viewed as guides, as things that were invented by us, or invented by the God that created us as well, if you want to go there, to assist us. The Sumerians believed, and the Babylonians, by inheritance, believed that the stars were here to reveal the story of mankind, that the more we looked into it, the more we would understand why we're here, and the more that we would begin to understand and move towards our promised utopia, that the stars are a kind of code placed by the Godhead at the beginning of time for us to slowly unravel it as we become smarter and more conscious and more perceptible. We kind of crack the code, and then we're officially a utopia. We're officially reaching Christ consciousness. We're officially, you know, breaking through the fourth wall, transcending our, you know, banal, mundane existence of uncertainty and misunderstanding. So you can see why, and I know I have to bring this to a close now, you can see why I wanted to bring up this topic in so many ways, because although it's my first talk on the spiritual studies course that isn't explicitly one religion, this is a discussion that speaks to all religions. All religions variate in this discussion of how to understand the stars, whether it's serious or whether it's just about our planets, or, you know, mentioning the constellations or the luminaries, whatever they're called in whatever traditions and however they're understood. They always play a part, and there's a reason for that. There is an inherited culture here that we don't know about. I mean, it goes beyond Proto-Indo-European. we're talking, I mean, if you're an Atlantean sort of subscriber, we're talking about that level of history, or we're talking about some sort of divine understanding or inherited tradition that comes all the way from our primitive era. Gosh, man, there's so much unknown to be had here. But one thing I want to make very, very clear is that Vogue magazine is not okay. It is not an accurate representation of what astrology is. For people to point to the shysters who create overly generalized, confirmation biased, oriented horoscopes are simply doing it for viewership. They are shysters. There are good astrologers in the modern day. There are people who have held the craft throughout all this time of historical repression. You should take them seriously. You should hear them out. There is a lot of technicality that goes into the understandings of astrology. You have trines, you have squares, you have conjuncts, you have sextiles, you have quintiles, you have conjunctions, you have you have the houses rotations, you have the natal charts, you have the calculations of the cusps. I mean, so on and so forth. The outer planets, the inner planets, the different embodiments. There is so much to be unveiled, and we stand generally as a culture blind to this nuance that we once knew very collectively and that we accepted completely. So I hope this can kind of break some of those taboos, reinvent that fascination that we were born with as a human society, and I guess kind of learn it some more so that we can accurately understand the traditions that we've been inheriting in their full purpose and impact. Okay, I'm through. Let's see.
Okay, y'all. I think I have time for one more. If y'all want to hear one more before information man is supposed to come on at 9 o'clock, I think. So I think I got time to play one more. I guess he's gonna come on at 9. I know the time difference is different from here to wherever he is. It always be one time, and then when I go to look for it, it don't be on. He don't be on yet. Do what as a service share? No, I'm just trying to enlighten people. Cause see, once you know your natal chart, then you know your life purpose. You know what? See, this is my purpose. That's why I'm doing this, because this is my purpose, my life purpose. This is what I'm here to do, to awaken the consciousness, to awaken the collective. This is my path, because I know my natal chart. Oh, you think I'm a good lecturer? See, my North Node is in Scorpio. It deals with spirituality, and that's my life purpose. Is I'm very deeply spiritual, and then I have Pisces in my ninth house, which is the house of religion, and it's also called the house of the Father. And my father was a minister, so I was raised in. See what I'm saying? I can't make this up, baby. Everything already has been already preordained, pre-designed. See, we forget who we are until to that third eye open up when we wake up. Then we start to slowly begin to learn who we were. So I've already, I was, it was already in my natal chart. It's written. Pisces in the ninth house is someone who has a deep seated, brought up in religion. And see, my biological mother abandoned me, and my parents adopted me. My father was a minister, my mother was a registered nurse and a beautician. So I was raised in a house of religion. See, it was already preordained the way everything went down. See, I had to go inside and heal those childhood wounds. But see, I was fortunate because my parents adopted five of us. I was a baby. They had two biological children. There was seven of us all together. But we all knew who our biological parents were. I love her, but I had to get over it. I love her because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be in this world. And then I had to get it into my mind, and I had to forgive her because I had to come to the conclusion that it was all for the betterment. It was all for me to get what I needed to put me on my path. See what I'm saying? I tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play his explanation on tarot. 'Cause I'm heavy into tarot. I'm gonna let y'all listen to this one real quick.
Welcome to Spiritual Studies Session 22. Rather fitting that this is 22. I've been planning on this one for a while. So in order to understand today's topic, which is tarot, we've been talking a little bit about occultism. For those of you listening to this session does stand independent. You don't need to hear the other.
I hope y'all enjoying this, what I played. I'm going on 3 hours. I need to get them hours in. I need
the others
my
do
watch
help.
hours.
But if you want to understand this topic more, you'll find more about occultism in this course. So today, in focusing on tarot, we are explaining the history of the cards themselves. We're explaining what tarot is and how it's been misunderstood. And then we are going over the kind of fundamentals of how to understand tarot. So in this hour or so session, you're going to get a rounded perspective and understanding of a little bit of everything about tarot. So first, what is tarot, right? Basically is the most popular form of divination in the modern world. In the ancient world, which, by the way, if you want to learn more about this, go to the divination topic and spiritual studies course. Anyway, in the ancient world, we had tea leaves. You could use the entrails of fish. You could use different plants. You could roll dice. There were all sorts of ways to divine the future. Astrology is another one. People think of crystal balls when they think of this stuff, psychic stuff. And really, when it comes down to tarot, you could say that those that read them are psychic, if you want to get into that. However, someone who is familiar with understanding the language of symbols is capable of doing it one and the same. There definitely is an artistry when it comes to tarot and understanding it. But what I want to clear up right away is that many people believe that they don't want to be read because they're afraid of getting a bad card. There are no bad cards, really. We'll go over that towards the end of the talk, the specificities. They don't want to get a death card. They don't want to get a devil card. They don't want to get a hanged man. None of these are bad in the way that people think of it. It is over sensationalized. Also, this talk of tarot being aligned with conjuring spirits and devilry. This is silly. This is nothing other than a tremendously silly approach. If somebody actually looked into tarot, they would realize how terribly wrong they are, and that most of this can be chalked up to fear-mongering Catholicism. Why is tarot so popular is an interesting question. And I'm not saying it's tremendously popular. I'm just saying popular compared to other forms of divination. And the reason is that it is a lot more directed. There is a lot more, it's a lot more matter of fact. It's a lot more spelled out than other forms of divination. It gives you more detail to go on. That's why it's really caught on. But anyway, that's a brief introduction as to the ideas, but I want to spend a good amount of time here talking about, well, where did this all come from? How did this start? And I'm going to start and set the tone very fast and say that people don't even know where the term tarot came from. There are many different explanations. So some people have said that it's Taoist and Chinese. Some people have said that it's Latin, combination of the word rota and oret, which means the speaking wheel. Others say it's Indo-Tartar, which is kind of like a reference to the zodiac. Others say that it's Hebrew, meaning like the word Torah, tarot, Torah. This word Torah meaning law, interesting. Or, some could say that it comes from Egyptian, from tar, which means path, and ro, which means regio or region. So the path or the region, which path would be a good way of understanding what tarot is, illuminating the path in front of you. We see in the etymology of the word tarot that in Old Italian it was referred to as tarocchi. And we can try to trace that to Arabic as well in the word taraha, which means rejected or put aside, something that's put aside. Interesting note there. And this is all just to say that there's many ways that we can trace the word alone. So in regards to where it comes from, you see, and here's something to distinguish straight away. It is a card game. Tarocchi is a card game. In German, it's Tarak. Taros is literally a card game, like Uno. And that this is more or less how it started. It started as cards, just a card game, play spades, play Texas Hold'em, whatever, a fun pastime. However, this idea of cartomancy or divinations through cards is linked to a number of different traditions, much like the name tarot. So you could say that it's coming from the I Ching. It's inspired by Asia. You could say that it's inspired by the Indian Tantra tradition, the Tantric tradition. You could say that it's inspired by the hieroglyphs of...
I'm dropping these gems on them in here today, info. I'm trying to look here. Sherry rocking with me. I don't know if Lou's still here or not. But I told him I'm trying to put something in their brains, boy. I got some heavy shit in here.
Egypt, and you could say that it's inspired by the Kabbalah of Jewish mysticism. It's not wrong to consider that these symbols of tarot are coming.
See, everybody knows that I'm into tarot. Like I said, I read tarot cards for myself. I have about 10 decks of cards, tarot cards, and so, stuff like that. I've always been into numerology, and different astrology. I've always been different from a child. I've been dropping these bombshells on them in here today. Ain't that right, Share Girl? Tell everything that he's been telling you. What I talk about with these birth charts and later charts, he dropping it. He breaking it down for you. I told him. I said I already know this. I'm trying to put something in y'all head.
The Book of Thoth, as mentioned in Hermeticism. It's also not wrong to say that they're coming from the 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, which, by the way, the I Ching is more than 3,000 years old. So that's a real long story there. And it's not wrong, potentially, to say that it came from the gypsies. Now, to talk about that a little bit, I think everybody should really know this. Gypsies come from originally left India, and there's a number of stories as to why. I'm not going to get into that, but it was a migratory time, and some of them went to the Middle East, and some of them went to Egypt. And these particular people that went to Egypt, as they went to Europe, were called gypsies, like Egyptians. Okay, gypsies, just drop the E, right? So they're calling them Egyptian, which you can see how kind of like bullish that understanding is. And the idea is that these gypsies came into knowledge of esotericism in Egypt and brought that over to Europe, which would subsequently inspire the deck that we call tarot. The symbolism of the cards would therefore be derived from Egypt and fortune telling. Now, the other way that we could look at this is say that it's all about the Knights of Templar. We could say that that the Knights of Templar, which by the way were dismantled in 1309, had accumulated a tremendous amount of wealth and knowledge of secret society material. They participated in gematria, which was the decoding of letters and numbers in the Bible. So they were definitely into esotericism and Kabbalah accordingly. And to pick up some of this occultism or some of this, woo-woo that goes along with the story of tarot could be linked to the Templars accordingly. I mean, you go to their Gothic cathedrals and you see all this symbolism. You read how into alchemy they were. You learn about how they had these very set rules that you could not let anybody see you make gold, to hold the secrets. So all these things would kind of give a squinty eye towards the Templars being something a part of the story. However, scholars are very adamant to say that this started as a card game, nothing more, no more inspiration needed. The occultism came later. That much might be true, but the occultism that came later also had roots. So this is a very complicated story. Not just the word itself, but also where's this inspiration coming from? Where did these ideas originate in? It tends to, in explaining any one of these things, it tends to fan itself out tremendously. So you could say, if we're dealing with the regular story, hey Connor, get to the real nitty gritty solid story of this, right? You could say that it all started in the 1200s with the Gypsies or the Templars giving ideas. And then you could say that in the 13th century or 14th century, that the actual cards started to be made after this knowledge had been around for a while. So the people that brought them are also thought to be the Chinese, in the sense of inspiring the card game based off of something that's existed in China for a long time, which is the game Mahjong, Mahjong. Also thought that the Islamic Mamluk cards are an inspiration. So now we're bringing, Islam into this too. So it could be Asia, it could be Europe, but during this time, 12th century to 14th century, we see that the ideas are there and the cards are being made for the first time. So the first recorded date of actual cards seems to be 1367. These cards, by the way, have never been banned by the church. Back in the day, the Renaissance, or not the Renaissance, the Inquisition and the church never disallowed for these cards. So the idea of them being very risque or devil worship, again, is not substantiated. So the first time that we see a recognizable deck, as we might call it, in tarot, not these kind of more anarchic early beginnings, these kind of prototype cards. The first time we really start seeing it is 1440 and 1450 in Milan, Florence, Bologna, all in Italy. This is when we start to see the regular four suit pack, which everybody knows these cards, all the numbers, spades, clubs, so on. But what makes them tarot in particular is the inclusion of what are called trump cards nowadays, but back then were called the Triomphi cards, which is the whole deck would have been called the Carte dei Trionfi, which would have been triumph cards, which we now call trump cards or trumps. So these are found, as I mentioned, in 1440. So these are the trump cards are really where you get the hard and fast esotericism of tarot, the story of tarot, which I'll explain more later. But the earliest decks are all hand painted. Mind you, here's this whole discussion of the printing press, right? So since they were hand painted, it's generally thought that they were rather small, and it is generally 100% true, actually, that it was purely a thing for aristocrats. You needed the money to commission these cards until later, and the printing press came out, and then mass production was possible. But that didn't mean that they got super popular. What really made them popular was the Italian wars. And this spread it outside of Italy to Switzerland, to France. It would get very popular in France. And back in this time, we're talking about the Tarot of Versailles. And this was the kind of OG deck, the original cards is the Tarot of Versailles. However, later on in the 18th century, this is where we see this big revival of the cards, bigger than ever, all around Europe, with few exceptions. One of the exceptions is Britain and Ireland. French tarot really took it off much later too, in the 1970s. That really took off in the 1970s in general, but especially the actual card game. Again, so I'm telling you kind of two different histories here. I'm telling you about the formation of the cards, but I'm also telling you about its formation of occultism. So these stories are intermixed, right? There's the card game and there's the divination game, and these are two different things. So in France, in Europe, all across what used to be the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you'll see people play the actual tarot game. So keep that in mind. That's a portion of confusion to be had all over, right? So the pictures became stylized over time. And this would attract the mystics, the spiritualists, that later would become convinced that they were capable of divination, that you could use the cards for divination. This is the general understanding of as the cards have gone. Like I said, first it was just a game, later comes the divination. But before the game and the later divination, the knowledge was there that would later become a part of the cards. That's the general understanding. You can mix things up a lot. Like I said, this is all pretty wish-washy. But what is for sure is that the one that really would bring occultism to tarot was Jean-Baptiste Elinet. And we're talking the 1700s here. So he is the one that's responsible for making this much more popular and making this much more occult. So he's the one that issued the first divinatory deck exclusively for divination, rather than something for entertainment or to show off in aristocratic parties. But alongside Jean-Baptiste, we have Antoine Court de Gebelin, which is another notable name in the history of tarot. Again, well, in this case, it's a lot more explicit because Gebelin is a Freemason, and he decidedly traces these cards back to the Egyptians, tying them to the occult, saying that the cards imbibe or embody the ideas such as Osiris, Ra, Isis, and the like, that the artwork is synonymous to the Egyptian hieroglyphics, like we said before. So now we got it in the hand of an occultist and a Freemason, which Freemasons are essentially occultists as well, and they are writing books and popularizing this. When it comes to Gebelin, I hope I'm saying his name right, Gebelin, he's the one that first set out the idea in 1781 that the cards are tied to Hebrew letters. If you get a deck now, the Thoth deck or the Rider-Waite, you'll see that the trump cards have not only an astrological alchemical sign at the bottom, but also have a Hebrew letter assigned with it as well. And we can thank that Hebrew letter to Gebelin. He's the one that made that connection, the Freemason. And he's the one that included marrying those two traditions together, or remarrying those two traditions together, depending on how we want to look at this. Later on, we would see this guy, Eliphas Levi, in 1856, tying the Kabbalah to tarot, which that would be, you know, kind of implied if the Hebrew letters are already there. But again, as I've mentioned before, Kabbalah's secrets or Kabbalah's wisdom has only recently really been made available to even the occultists. It was kept under very tight lips for a long time, so that's why this is showing up later. And then, you know, you have the Golden Dawn, as I mentioned last week in the Hermeticism talk. Their leader, Samuel Mathers, or Samuel Liddell McGregory Mathers, head occultist, former Freemason, making tarot a default part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So here, as I've mentioned before, we see the confluence of Hermeticism, tarot, ancient pagan practices all coming together and being brought up, emblemized by the Golden Dawn, making it subsequently a lot more available to the public. But right after this time too, in our whole story here, this is when we're seeing in 1910 the Rider-Waite deck first being created. This is by a mystic, a academic, a visionary named Arthur Edward Waite. Waite is the one that came up with the, well, I don't want to say came up with, cooked up, researched, looked into, collected the knowledge that would create the original OG tarot. For those that don't know, the Rider-Waite deck is considered the kind of quintessential tarot deck because there are many to choose from nowadays. He commissioned Pamela Coleman Smith to do the illustration. So luckily enough, we have the name of both the illustrator and the guy who came up with it, right? So Waite was he was well acquainted with occultism. He wrote many books on Kabbalah, on black magic, grimoires, ceremonial magic. He was very into this topic, and he became infatuated with tarot, and thus why he created the deck, and thus why it has such a bravado about it, because he knew what he was doing. And he's quoted with saying, "The true tarot is symbolism. It speaks no other language and offers no other signs." So for Waite, tarot really is about knowing how to read the symbols. Anything else is confusion. And him putting this out there is yet again popularizing it, making it more accessible. This would capture the attention of the derelict mystics and the adepts of different secret societies. And then our last kind of step on the history of the cards of tarot and the occultism is Aleister Crowley. He created the Thoth, the Book of Thoth, the Thoth deck, in 1944. That was the last major influence of tarot. And I think just about everybody's somewhat familiar with Crowley, right? Falling out of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, creating Thelema, always being a big show about him, ceremonial, sex magic, so forth. And regardless of what you think of his, endeavors, the Thoth deck is also not equally respected, but nearly equally respected to the Rider-Waite. It is also a very tried and true deck with honestly few differences than the Rider-Waite deck. There's some name changes and differences in art, but a lot of it's fundamentally the same. Nowadays, we see, ever since the 70s especially, a tremendous more amount of decks. Some I will prize higher than others because, like Rider-Waite said, it's all about the symbolism. So a lot of the modern decks go for kind of gimmicky themes, which I'm not going to say are all bad. Don't get me wrong. But to lose the symbolism of the cards is to lose an entire other layer, an entire level of depth that the cards are supposed to have. So as I mentioned before, you would think during this whole history that I've spoke of here that the church would have something to say about it. And in all the Inquisition documents, the tarot deck is never mentioned. At times, the church did outlaw gambling, but like I said, the deck, the cards were of a board game. It was for fun. And also, I should note that it's advantageous that they never got rid of them because, as I mentioned, the cards are associated with the aristocratic class, the richies. Mm-hmm. So, whether laws pass, the laws have always been for the poor. The laws don't apply to the rich. Right. So they would never do things to oust the rich, right? Because who's paying the communion baskets? Anyway, so this is the point where I want to start getting into actually understanding tarot itself. The first 30 minutes get into the historical context. Last 30 minutes get into what the actual meat and potatoes is. So if you're a practitioner, or if you're somebody who's getting into this, or you're just curious, this is going to give you either to the advanced or the beginner different ways of approaching the cards, understanding the cards, the different suits, and all the different categories that they fall into. So we'll begin with the different suits. And mind you, all of tarot is synonymous with the regular card deck, aces, jokers, kings, queens, spades, hearts, right? All of this is synonymous. So anyway, let's get into it. Okay. So, cups. Cups are corresponding to hearts. So in tarot, it's cups, and in the regular deck, it's hearts. If you pull a cups card, cups cards are always associated with emotions. They represent water. They represent the direction of west, and they represent the season of fall. In a reading, pulling a cups card, again, has to do with emotions. So what does this mean? It could be in regards to happiness. It could be in regards to love. It could be in regards to decision making. There's an association with emotions in general. It has everything to do with the emotional part of the consciousness.
That's why they always say that water signs are so emotional.
Part of decision making.
You could tell.
So somebody who's pulling a lot of cups cards, this could have to do with a personal matter, a romantic affair, a marriage, or just plainly one's emotional intelligence, their emotional landscape. So that's what hearts is about. That's what cups is about. The cup runneth over, right?
All about love.
There's always been this association with cups and emotions in this way. Feminine, the cup, right? The swords are correspondent with spades. Makes sense, right?
Told you.
This is the element of air.
Air.
The north direction.
Air rules communication.
Winter. So what does winter feel like, right? Winter is cold, merciless. There's oppression, but it also involves ambition, courage. But all of these things also include strife. So pulling a swords card is involving the intellectual, involving power, involving thinking. It represents the mental end of life. However, pulling a lot of swords cards might point to habits, the need to change habits, the need to reflect on habits. A sword, literally in esoteric symbolism, divides things. It cuts.
See, a sword, a king of swords or queen of swords, they can be they're good people, but they can be sharp with their tongue. They speak the truth. See, I got all that. I'm an Aquarius Mercury. I'm a Libra Pluto. I'm a Gemini Mars. I'm a Leo rising in Saturn. I'm an Aries Lilith, what they call Black Moon Lilith. I have Jupiter, Cryon, and MC, which is my mid-heaven. So I have that in Aries. I'm a Sagittarius, Venus and Neptune conjunction. When he was talking about the conjunctions and the sextiles and all that, I know my natal chart. See my natal chart right here? Hold on a minute. Let me take this over here so y'all can see me. See right here? This is my natal chart right here. See that? That's my natal chart. All of it broke down. wrote down where I can read it. See what I'm talking about? Look at that. See there? Look at the. See my cards right there with every zodiac on there. I ain't even opened them up. Brand new. Look at that. I got the moonology cards. I got all that stuff. With the moon, tell you about the moon phases and the moon cycles and everything. Okay? I got the oracle cards, the African goddess cards, with the ancestors and everything on it. See what I'm talking about? See that? I don't play. Yeah, look here. I got these here. I got that. See that? I got them. See, I'm the high priestess, baby. It's the high priestess. I know all. The high priestess know all. But she don't say nothing about it. The high priestess moving silent. She don't say nothing. See that? I got cards on top of cards. That right away deck he was just talking about. That's right there. See them pinnacles right there? That's earth energy. That's me, boo.
One thing away from something it is not. So it's a divider. So someone who has a lot of swords cards needs to clean house. They need to get rid of something. They need to kill something. It's not a happy thing. And by kill, this is all allegorical, mind you. This is not something that people are happy to see, because generally swords cards are pointing at their own bad habits, and the need of painful change, right? If you need a surgery, you need to cut yourself up in order to get better, in order to heal, right? So swords cards, the winter is a time for enduring. Air is a very flighty element to work with. It can whip you, but it can also be soft, right? It's very unpredictable. Anyway, the next one is wands, and wands are equivalent to clubs. And this is the element of fire, the direction of south, and the season of summer. Which makes sense, right? Fire, summer, south is hotter. Hey. Fire and wands represent change. What does fire do? Fire changes. It flickers.
That's right.
It is activity. It's movement, growth, creation, creativity. Presumably.
See those wands. When you see them wands, that means that's like communication, messages, and stuff like that. See that them swords right there? Them swords. A lot of times when the swords come out, especially in a relationship reading, somebody doing some dirty shit behind your back. You stab, you see all them swords in his back? Somebody got them out there gossiping, running your name in the streets, all that shit. See what I'm saying? See, that's how you had them swords crossed. That's how I be closed off. Got to protect my energy because I'm the star. I can't make it up. I can't make it up, boo.
Intelligence as well, but inspiration, determination. All these things involve some sort of energy. So a lot of, if you were to pull a lot of wands cards, the theme always is that something is being created. There's a passion. There's an initiative. There's a trailblazing. The situation is very heated, right? There's a lot going on. It's not placid. It's not calm. It's energetic. So interesting note here, right? Because how you would describe fire is the alchemical
intuition. That's when I tell y'all about it. I talk about intuition all the time. Once you go within and you center with God, get in with the divine, because God lives in us. See what I'm saying? That's what the Christ consciousness is. See, Christ was nothing but a prophet, like the rest of them, Buddha and all of them. When he obtained enlightenment, that's what he was doing. That was the secret. See, in one of them books, I think it was the book of Thomas, that they didn't put the Dead Sea Scrolls. When he gave, I think he was talking to Peter. He said, whispered to Peter's ear, and one of them got jealous. And he said if he told him he wanted to know what Christ told him, he said if I tell you, he said I have to kill you.
A symbol of wands. Interesting, right?
Christ said, "Ye are God."
And lastly, when it comes to the suits, we're talking about what in some decks is called coins, what in some decks are called pentacles,
which is earth,
and what in other decks are called discs. So it depends on what deck you're picking up, but it's either coins, pentacles, or discs. They're all the same thing, just different names, okay? This corresponds to the suit of diamonds in the regular deck.
I told you that.
As we can presume,
I told you, you can read regular colors.
Direction is east. It represents east. And the season is spring, right? The last one left.
My father didn't play that shit. You ain't gonna play no damn cards in his, or not in his house, but now I know why. See, but see, he was a Mason. He was 33rd degree Mason. He already knew. He already knew.
The element, again, the last one left, is earth.
You know that
pentacles, discs, coins are an earth card. So
and see, and they associate us with the devil. See, but that's a pretty motherfucker there. That got them devil don't play. But you know what the devil represents? See what I say, Capricorn right there. The devil represents addictions and shit like that. You in addictions, indicate. See, that's what that represents. They tried to demonize the devil. See, but still, it all is explained through astrology. The reason they demonized us is because when the winter came, we killed all the. See, when winter come, everything die out. So that was the evil one, the dark one. See what I'm saying? You better get it together. Better get it together. But that's a pretty motherfucker there. So we rule the material wealth. We were the earthly side. We rule the wealth. We rule, money and material things, stuff like that. That's what we rule. Pinnacles, money.
Is in respect to material possessions, money, finances, trades, all means of commerce, materialism, security, solidity. Earthy people need to feel like they're right. They need to feel like they have firm footing. They need to feel like they're very convinced of the material world. They're not interested in abstract things. They are caught up in what is immediately present and what you can put your hands on. So in this way, to draw a bunch of coin cards, pentacle cards, disc cards, means that this reading has a lot to do with this willingness or this creation of stability. This person, it's in regards to work or a career or getting a house or providing for a family or any of these things that are very earthly. I feel compelled to say superficial, not in a derogatory sense, but your immediate concerns and immediate needs. These are the coins. These are the diamonds, pentacles, discs, right? Earthy. Yeah. So that's the different suits.
Have you ever heard people say that? See, Capricorns, we the most misunderstood sign in the zodiac. People think we egotistical, but see, we not. We analogical. We logical people. See, we analyze things. We don't just move fast. We got to analyze. We got to plan. We got to strategize. That's what we do. See? That's what we do. See, we the ghosts. We ain't gonna never stop. We gonna make it to that mark. You ain't never heard people say that Capricorns keep money. Capricorn, we the luckiest sign in the zodiac, and guess what? The rarest sign in the zodiac. It ain't that many Capricorns in the world. We the rarest sign.
And in the same way, we also have this translation between the court cards. And by court cards, I mean in the regular deck, we're used to seeing the Jack, Queen, King. And in the tarot deck, it's very similar, except we have one other. So it goes the Queen, the King, the Knight, and the Page or the Princess. Again, depending on what deck you're looking at. So the Knight, and other decks too, you get the Prince as well. So at max, in the tarot deck, you have the Princess, the Prince, the Knight, the Queen, and the King. So there's the potential of all the court cards. So the Page cards or the Princess cards All of these, by the way, represent a physical person. This person doesn't necessarily have to be alive. It could be somebody who's passed on.
That's right.
That's influencing how we understand the reading.
That's
Again,
right.
not in a
That's
spirit way, but just to
That's
understand this person's
My daddy come
mentality.
through all the time. He was a Pisces.
The princess cards mean that whoever we're reading about would tend to be younger than the person who's getting the reading.
Sagittarius.
So, if they're a queen, they tend to be older. If they're a princess, they tend to be younger, right? Presumably. Usually, the princess, or the page, or the knight as well, all tend to be somewhat naive or immature in some way. They're learning their faculties. They're learning how to use